Hello, the Hive. Welcome, welcome. This is the knee jerk reaction for episode 809, Pharos, written by herself, Diana Gabaldon, and directed by Emer Conroy. And she's a great director. Like, I liked her last season, but I really noticed that she takes such interesting shots. And the cold open was fantastic. The way she shot the cold open, I thought was great. We're here to talk about this episode, but I do want to tell you this one is going to be not as in depth as what I probably would do normally, just more live reaction and chatting about it with you guys, because I'm also going to be doing a show on Monday with Chelsea from the Sassenach Files. She's going to come on here and be my guest for like a discussion. We do a lot of joint shows, Chelsea and I. She's a bee before she had her own thing. So we still like, I try to do things with her. She does things with me. And this time is kind of going to be our last little wahoo before the end of the season. We are going to still do after that when she does her superlative show. I usually join her for that. So we'll still do other shows, but this is the last one we're going to do before the season is over. So it's going to be kind of a show to talk a little bit about the Gabaldonian moments, and it's the standout moments of this episode, and like chat about it. Get more cash, but still we'll be talking a little more. So I want to save some things to say as well. But I'm also doing something really special for my patrons. www.patreon.com/queenbeeshive. That's my patron page. I do this as my only income for what I do, and then Tom's disability. So my patron support is just so important to me, and so appreciated. And so on my Patreon, for my patron supporters, I am doing like a little special thing. I literally thought of it just as I was about to start the episode, because I thought it's the 100th episode. I want to do something that, is special to commemorate that. And it's DG's episode, and it's the penultimate episode. And I thought, it's Mother's Day weekend. So my goal is to have that finished to post on Patreon for you as an extra bit of something special for Mother's Day. That was my idea. But I thought of it. I didn't really plan it in my head. I just thought of it as I was about to like watch the episode. And I thought, I'm going to do this. So what I did was, so it's not, in the beginning, it's kind of trying to feel it out. But what I did was, as I was watching, I would pause at different moments and different scenes and record just a thought that popped in my head, or something I'm wondering in this moment, like live, as I was watching, not knowing what's going to happen next. And so, and because also this isn't, a lot of this hasn't happened in the book yet, that happens in this episode. So it is a lot of new stuff for us. So I thought that as well. I said, this will be good because it's not even something I know what they're going to do necessarily. So I did that, and it was funny. And you get all my reactions. At one point, I'm laughing. At one point, I'm crying. I'm just like, at one point, I'm doing a happy dance. I think you all can figure out which point I was doing the happy dance. I'll tell you, like, I actually recorded myself going na 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 na. Hey, 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 pigweed, goodbye, or whatever the hell I said. I was in the zone, right? So it was a lot of fun. It's not something I would put out on YouTube or anything, even like this public. But if you are one of my Patreons, you'll get to see that. And I'll put it together visually with pictures of, as like I'm going through, putting pictures, how I do, how I produce things. Anyway, I'm doing that because I've always wanted to do like a watch along thing. You see those reactions, but I can't even hardly put a scene or even a preview or something without them giving me a crap about copyright. So I can do still pictures, and I can do like little teeny, like 10-second, scene or something, a little exchange, but you can't do anything more than that. So I can't even do the preview on YouTube without getting flagged for it. So I have to do those on Patreon. So I can't do a thing where you see the thing playing and then, in different scenes, and then I stop. But this way, I said it's audible because I looked like hell when I watched it. And so I just recorded audio, but it's going to look neat and it's going to be cool. It's just very I'm not informing, I'm not explaining, I'm not doing anything like that. Although maybe at the end I did a little bit. That's before I've had a chance to really sit with it. Then as I sat with it, I said, some things are really missing in this that needed to be there. And I talk about that. I kind of do a little 10-minute thing at the end. So I hope you guys like that. I'm going to work on that as soon as I get off this live. I'm going to start putting that together and work on it so I can get it up for tomorrow. I said to my husband, Angela will be so happy about the pigweed getting the brush off from. Oh, I was. And you know what I was doing? As it looked like he was trying to like walk slowly at first away, get up to walk away. And I thought, oh my God, don't let him turn around. Don't turn around, William. Don't turn around, William. Keep on going. Be strong. Be strong. I was dying. Oh my God, because it made me nervous the way it was going. It kind of looked like he might turn around and be like, nah, I'm staying with you or whatever. I was like, oh, please don't do that. But he was strong, our William. He said, no more lies. Kick it to the curb. You know who I thought of? The whole cold open. Selima. I was like, oh my God, Selima is loving this episode. I know it, just from the cold open because it was just so good for Lord John. This episode was so book Lord John. All the different flavors of his character were in this episode. And I read an article. I'm just kind of now random. I'm still not even on my notes now. But I was reading an article of him, an actual really good interview. I put it in the files event. I don't think I posted it in the thread because I was waiting until the thread was till Sunday or whenever, till Sunday night. I was going to put it on as its own article because it was really good. And he was talking about how he really loved this episode because it showed a lot of other colors of his personality than what Outlander people are used to seeing. He says, but people that read the books, they know all these different sides of Lord John, his soldier side, his spy side, his dealing with somebody that he doesn't want to deal with side, his frustration, like all the different things in his character. He's not just this 1-2 note character like we've seen in the book. And we start to get that last season too. Last season and this season, they have done right by John, I think, in the show. But he said, being that she wrote this, because he hasn't really been in a lot that she wrote, if you recall. A lot of her episodes didn't incorporate a lot of Lord John. So in the article, he was talking about, I think it's with Men's Journal, he was talking about how it was so important to him to nail this episode and all of the different things with him and Jamie, with him dealing with, Richardson and him talking to Percy. There was like so many great John moments and scenes that show all different, his heartbreak, internally when Percy said he loved him. And you could see it till, and then he says, like he doesn't cave to it, but you can see it tore at him. You know what I mean? Like he showed all of that nuance so well. And then the scene with Jamie, God, that scene was so good. It was so good. It was so good. And I kept going, I really need this scene. I hope we get it in the book. I hope we get a scene like this in the book, because I started thinking everything I'm loving about the episode. She said none of it's in the book. Anything that's not, what we've already read that we're seeing is not in the final book. And I thought, how close does she mean that? Does she mean like it's not exactly, it's more broader in the book, but it's still pretty much like some of these things are happening? Or does she mean like I got him away from Amaranthus in the show, but in the book he sticks with her? Like I don't want it to be like that. So I'm hoping to God that at least the basics are the same as they are when she writes it. All right. So for me, John was a standout character in this episode, and I'm so glad, so glad that Diana had this episode, because anybody else's hands would have never written these characters. She had so many great character moments in this episode. I think that was the best strength of it. The logistics, the missing glue, and that kind of stuff was my faults, were my bads with this episode. My biggest bad is that they went to freaking Savannah and they're dealing with this guy they know, Percy, okay, who was the one that was dealing with Marcelly. I was already pissed about them sending Marcelly, letting her go anyway. You know that, right? And now they're there. They find out this person is part of this entire thing that kidnapped John, was about to expose him. Like he's treacherous involved with this. And they don't even like pop in to see her. They don't even say, even if they didn't want to take the time of making a whole scene of it, they could have said before we left, like, we're just, okay, we're going to go now. We need to still see Morsley before we head home. Something to say that they give a flying crap about this woman that they just sent off pregnant with 4 kids into a place that hates her and throws shit at her in marketplaces and friggin' all this, sends death threats to her door. And with, oh yeah, I think that's a great idea, take the money. And now this very next episode, they know Percy is involved in all this treachery, and they still don't have a problem with this. They still don't go check on her. Big mistake and my big error in this entire series if she's never touched on again, and that's it, we're done with Marsley. I'm gonna be pissed. To me, that'll be a big bad in this whole thing, because like it just is so not Jamie, to do that. I mean, there's just no way, especially after everything that happened in this episode. He would be bugging right over to make sure she's okay. I mean, now Percy's, now he's, so like, what does that mean? And the other thing was just the disconnect of how they arrived. Like, I think I even say in my reaction thing, I'm like, oh, okay, now we're here. Like, how did this happen? Okay, so Diana delivers such fabulous Gabaldonian dialogue with all of the humor, the poignancy, the heartbeats, the excellent scenes between characters and the relational bits, a lot of notes on relationships, reunion, resolution, making yourself vulnerable in a situation, all the humor, the whole scene. You'll hear me. I am cackling like a crazy person. The entire scene of when they get home. Just thinking about it, I was in this. Actually, I was laughing so hard that my son came down from upstairs. I said, "What the hell is going on?" I said, "Oh my god!" I said, "I'm laughing so hard at this scene." And he's like, "Geez, I heard you upstairs." So I was really cracking up when that whole bit where Jamie's like, "Oh, I forgive you. I've decided I'll forgive you." And Claire, like, when you look at Claire as that happens, the little face acting of Claire goes, she gives him the face like, what? And then she turns and she leans against the wall and puts her head down like, I can't believe this that he's saying this. And then when John like says, I don't forgive you and all that, and he walks away, she looks at him and she says, pride goeth before a fall. He said, did it quote the Bible? Let me Claire. It was just so, I could totally picture reading that banter on the page. It sounded so like them. And then he just looks at, tell me you don't love him. And he just looks at her, damn woman. Oh my god, or whatever. I was just dying. It was so good. It was so funny. Oh my god, did it quote the Bible at me, Claire? But I just loved all of the character, like really good character flavors of these people. And the same thing with John. And then a little fake out with the chess game. That was great. I mean, it was all so good, that whole strip. And then, of course, the goodbye and all of that. Like that whole section of the story, I thought was great. The rescue was okay, but something felt wrong. And I found out through looking at all her comments, because I usually try to gather those for Diana Deets when I do this show and when I do my deep dives. And Diana said that she didn't write some of the stuff that was in the scene with William and Claire. And I knew it as soon as I heard it because I know she hates the phrase, it takes a village. She hates that phrase. And so as soon as I heard Claire say it, I thought, yeah, she probably, that must be the sappy line. Because she said they took out something really great that I had in there for John and Jamie. Like in that scene, she had an exchange in that they took out. So I don't know what that was, but a piece of that is out. He talks about how they reworked that scene a lot with her circled in the discussion. So it wasn't like she was excluded, but he said they wanted to make it where each person, Jamie and John, came to some like meet in the middle thing. Like they both understood their wrongs in it. You know what I mean? Like him saying, like he didn't even understand. I think the "we were both fucking you" comment was the thing. He was thinking it was about him actually having sex with Claire, which wasn't really his issue. And so when he said that felt like a betrayal of our friendship, I think that kind of hit him like, whoa, okay, I wasn't thinking about it like that. You know what I mean? Like he's just like we were in grief. And I was just trying to explain something that was hard to explain and all of that. And so they wanted to make it where it wasn't just one bad guy and one good guy. It was a situation where they both had to come together for resolution. So I get what they were doing. And so she had to okay certain changes. And one of them apparently was a really great exchange between Jamie and John that was part of that scene that they took out. So I don't know what it was. Maybe it'll be in the book. But there was also and so I knew it was from that scene. When we got to see the little clip of her saying, "It's a village. We all had two fathers and it's a village," all this. I said, "I bet you this is part of the sappy thing that they added of Claire." I even said it in the comments of the post because it didn't sound like her. It sounded like something they would make that sounds very haughty. Yes, that's how, not how anybody actually talks. And so I said that I can pretty much guarantee she didn't write that. And as it turns out, she says, "No, I got that back. I sent it back. Take this out." She said, and they took it out and put it back in, and then we negotiated on it some more. And she said, and I gave in to let them, do a little more of their two dads little thing that they were doing and change some of the line about the village. Apparently, it was more said about it, and they trimmed it down to it. It's a village. Oh, everybody has part in raising a child or whatever she said. And the thing is, it is very anachronistic too, because that phrase comes from the whole Hillary Clinton thing, and she was before Hillary Clinton, so it would have been something she heard frequently said. Oh, I do, just in case something happens between here and the coffee pot. I at least got another sip in. Anyway, so that apparently there was a negotiation on the reconciliation of Jamie and John. There was a little bit of negotiation in that, but a lot of that was her. You could read it; it's her, and listening to it. And then the part with William, I think that she probably brought up the Bree thing. Did Bree tell you that she had a different father and all that? Like that, I could see her saying, and a lot of that kind of a talk, and point out a few people that had multiple people. So you're in a family that's a normal thing. So she did make some negotiations, but I think that scene with the parting was 100% Diana. Even the rain bit, because the rain bit is the hard rain's going to fall parallel. That's why you see the rain falling. But the rain was intentional to show because she was paralleling that whole scene from 304 and when they do the leaving and the looking back and all that. She's always said like that was one of her favorite overall scenes of the whole entire series so far. Was that scene? She said she was bawling and crying watching it. And she said, so she was being asked at one point about some of the things that they do and when they add music and different things. And she said that she loves the Hard Rain's Gonna Fall song going for that scene. And she's like, the whole thing had me bawling in tears. So that always has meant a lot to her, that scene, even though it was a Tony episode. But that has always meant a lot to her and had like an emotional reaction to her. So you could tell she was trying to create all of these things to conjure up that scene to you. And so she wanted that rain coming down hard on them as they were leaving to call back to that scene. And the song Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. And I just thought that was great. I mean, there were so many great things in this. And then the look back, and it was just like this three beat. Diana loves her three beat. So you had the scene from 304. Here they are. Nobody, William doesn't know anything, clueless. He leaves, never looks back, and whatever. Like everybody's like unknown who they are and stuff. Then we come back in 406. We have this conversation because at first I was confused. If you remember when I did before a previous thing, I'm like, why are we Why are we bringing up again the whole bit with you didn't look back? We already talked about that. When he came in season 4, they talked about that. So I didn't understand why they were bringing it back again. So now you can see that why they were doing it. But in that season 4 episode, it comes out like he understands that this is Mac. And Jamie had said at that point, I didn't want to give you false hope. That's why I didn't look back. That was what he told him then. I was trying to make it hard severance because I knew you were upset about it and I didn't want to give you false hope. So then we have this now. Everybody knows everything. Everything's on the table. He knows this is his father and all of this kind of stuff. And as he's going away, now they are both in the know and he looks back just like William had looked back at him because he was letting him know, I hope I'm going to see you again in the season 4. And now in this one, you have them all resolved, everybody knowing everything. And then he goes a little smile like, he looked back at me. It was just so cute. It was so great. Oh, but then immediately after that, when we arrive on the ridge, I thought, wait a minute, we don't see Marsley? Like, what about Marsley? I was just sitting there going, what about Marsley? And I'm seeing like everybody, so I'm not alone in this because I've been seeing other people commenting. Why didn't he stop in and see Marsley? It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. I would imagine, why isn't Diana thinking of that either? I mean, I know that that's a different storyline than what we heard the whole thing about that, but still, that's what they did. I mean, it's illogical not to at least look for her and say hello. If not, check on her to make sure she's okay. We don't even know if she's got the money now. What happened? Nothing. I have a real issue with that. Matter of fact, I even came back after I sat there for a minute, like digesting. I had done all my little recordings. I'm like, that's really bothering me. I'm gonna have to add that on the end. So I came back and did like a little 5-minute piece on like, this is really a problem with this episode, is the stuff that they didn't explain and the way we jump from thing to thing. It feels like so fast we went through this whole thing. It does feels very fast. But it was very good. If you notice, it was a single storyline. That helped this episode, that we weren't jumping to different, like we weren't jumping back to the ridge in between. Some people were mad about that. Like, we didn't see any Buck, we didn't see hardly any Roger, we didn't see anything happening at the ridge. But it was actually easier to process all of the stuff that we were staying in the storyline. It's like we have an S storyline. All right, let me look at what you guys are saying. Brenda thought of me too. You guys know how much I can't. I even wrote a comment to Diana on her thread, because I really don't want him to be with her. I'm praying to God that the hints that I have gotten from things that she has said has led me to believe she's a nefarious person, that she's not going to be with him in the end. And then I saw a daily line that hasn't been actually openly released, but was used. Sometimes she gives like writing tip and then gives a little clip of a line, but it's not one she put out. And in it, she talks, somehow there's an exchange, and Claire is saying to Jamie, haven't you seen her and the way she's looking at him? Meaning Fanny. And he says, well, is he looking back? She said, yeah, he is. So that made me feel a little hopeful. And then when he said, go out and say goodbye to Fanny, and he sends William out, and then Fanny actually isn't out there. She is listening at the door, and she comes in and she says, I hope when my husband someday says goodbye, says things like Mr. Fraser just said to you. And she goes, well, what did he say? Because he was speaking in Gaelic. This was a separate one, but I think they go right next to each other. And he says, it sounded like he was saying, my hair smells like burnt sausage or something, is what Claire thought he said. And so she says, that's not what he said. And she goes, oh, it isn't? And then she thinks in her head, Cyrus must be teaching her a lot of Gaelic. And she says, he said, and she kind of looked down and like smiled, and she said, I burn for thee, Englishwoman, and I always will. And she goes, oh. And it was just really cute because you can see like this is all in her mind as William is around, and it kind of feels like she's kindling it a little bit. So I'm hoping that that's how it goes, because I really don't want him with Amaranthus or somebody else totally new. If we go that way, we could do that too. But I just don't want him with her. I don't trust her. I don't like her. I think that he deserves better than somebody that is going to, bail on her other husband just because she don't like what he's doing and try to get titles and money. I am not down with her at all. So anyway, the other thing I thought is the little clock thing didn't go anywhere. I really thought we were going to expose her as being part of this working with Richardson or something because I felt like they kept cueing her as being out of time, showing her with this little clock necklace. And she also always had one hanging from her dress, hanging like a kind of like a watch chain thing. She has that as well. She has two things of clocks. So it kind of made me feel like they're alluding, her time travel element, and plus her saying some things that were time or acting out of context for the time. So I really thought that was going to go somewhere. So I kind of felt like, wah on that. I had like mixed vibe, but that was my biggest issue: is the logic of things. Stone thing never went anywhere either. Like the stone breaking in Fanny's hand from the last episode. I expected this one to her to ask a question about it to come up, but instead we see time passing. So now months have gone by, the baby's born, all of that stuff. They're harvesting peanuts out the ground. So apparently this is never talked about. So why do we see it? I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like right now, my score on this episode is probably like a 4.8, 4.75, something like that, honeypots. So that could go up or down depending on what happens in the last episode. If things don't come out of anything to do, nothing is made of Fanny in this being shown, I'll be aggravated because why do we need to see it then? There's a few things that the way they ended, I feel like we could have just not add them. We could have eliminated that from the story because they didn't end up being really a purpose to it in the end. So I'm looking for things like that too. But so I kind of give the benefit of the doubt score now. That can go up and down once I see the whole thing and then no, yes, there was a purpose for that. No, there wasn't a purpose for that. You know what I mean? She said early on that she gave them tidbits, unless I'm mistaken. Well, you know what else I'm noticing too about that, Christine? If you notice, they gave her, first of all, they always want to give her the penultimate episode. I don't know why. I guess they want her to, like, they want to give her all the, like, loose ends they have to be tied up. But I think that they gave her this episode because it's the only one that's really out of what we know from the books. It's the only one that's going to have new information, really new information, because we haven't seen that happen. We came when like William was about to, help, sir, I need your help thing. The other thing was before we got the whole bit with the reveal. We didn't get that either in the books yet. But that at least, like I think she gave them that. We can see that in daily lines, some of that conversation, and all of that. And I think she's talked to a lot with Ron, so he probably got what it was going to turn out to be. But this episode, the whole rescue mission and all, I think they didn't really want to get into it because it has other people and time travelers from other periods and all of that. And it hasn't been at all explained in the book. So they wanted, I think, to put that one in her hands because King's Mountain is in the book. So plus she's co-writer for that episode. So she even would have influence on that as well. But we don't see what happened with the stone. And we also don't see how the whole thing with the Nutters and Lollybrock and seeing Richardson's face and that he was part of that. Nothing that is transpired in this episode connects to it at all or even mentions it. I thought he was going to say, this is like another disconnect I had. These people knew who she was, that they were trying to get to the journals and stuff and the letters and, about the gold. They were all part of that plan and he was in that plan. So he would know that she was a time traveler. I believe he did in the books. He's kind of been saying, I know things and talking in terms of knowing things that were going to happen. And I just felt like there would be some connection to say, your daughter's a lot like you or something. I thought he was going to reference in somehow, some way that he came from this time or I saw but they never showed any connection to that time in the resolution of this. And now he's dead. So, and now Amaranthus is gone, so that's not going to be connected in any way. So I just kind of feel like, well, why did they even bother? having him say Callahan and the guy take his thing off. Why'd they bother doing that if there's no point to it, you know? So those kinds of things bothered me, the disconnects, like. So when I go back, when we go and we finish, and I go back and I do my deep dive analysis episodes, where I do a lot of the adaptations and why they made choices and things like that. I'm going to look at things like that because we haven't gotten all the episodes yet. We don't know what's coming. But I wish somebody was there. I wish even somehow Brianna had seen him or something. You know, I where we got the line, "I know your sister," like he said to William that time. "I know your sister," and then William sent the letter to Warner. Like I wanted something to nod to that to say, "Oh yeah, you know, he was a threat to our daughter." That's another reason to hate him. You know, so I don't know. I'm rambling. See, this is why it's not good when I don't have a lot of notes. I thought Richardson looked kind of hot in this episode. Yeah, he looked better like when he's not in his wig and stuff. He actually was not as nefarious feeling. That she kind of made him almost sympathetic. Like he was really just trying to do something good. And she's kind of had that like pitiful, like, oh, we've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, dude. And you know what? She knows that the Montauk Five tried to do the same thing. Like everybody's coming. She knows Gayless came so that they would win and that this would be successful. Like everybody kind of had a project to do. Bree came back to stop the fire to her parents' house. Yet all these things still happen. And so she's looking at him telling her this, and she's like, "You can't, we've done it. We've done this. You're not going to change anything." And you almost see like she lets him go, even though I really hated this because it felt so wrong. But she's like, promise me, give me your word." Like, I was just sitting there going, what are you doing? What do you mean give you his word? Why are you trusting him? Are you crazy? He's trying to kill William. Give me your word that you will not hurt anyone else. I mean, it felt so stupid. And then I found out that Diana they had changed that as well. I don't know what she had originally written, but they did change. She said, "I did write a conversation between Claire and Richardson, but that was fiddled with as well." So I think some of the things in that conversation that sounded weird and clunky, it felt like one of those scenes where like a penultimate or finale where she goes through their history and she's telling them the times they tried and failed, and we did this and we tried, like to kind of tell the viewer like a scoop over all of their seasons and the things they tried and failed and the lessons that they've learned over the series about time travel, and that no matter how you want to change things, you can't. And we started like this trek with this VO of her saying time was getting closer to the day that I was supposed that Frank said Jamie would die or whatever. She said I kept looking for cracks and for things to change it and trying to find a place that could give me some hope, even despite everything that happened so far has not said that we can change anything. Yet I was looking for cracks. So that I think sets up why she was giving him this chance. Not because she really wanted to help him, because she wanted to see, maybe he can, and I'll put my hope in what I'm hoping will change by seeing, can it change? And then when he gets shot, she just looks like, yep, it ain't nothing's going to change, like clearly. So I felt like it was supposed to be for two reasons. I put this in my notes, so I'll just say it now. Two reasons I think that was in there for her to take it off, and it was one of those things where it was plot driven, not character driven. I put that in my notes somewhere. Plot driven, not character driven, because the plot needed her to let him go to kind of show that, like, loop back to her thinking in the beginning, I'm looking for cracks and ways that this might not come to be. And also having some sympathy of him being a fellow time traveler and that he had a good intention in what he was trying to do and all of that. And so, maybe, like, can I have a chance? He makes it sound like so sure of it. And then, boom, he gets taken out. And then I also think it was plot driven because I think what they wanted him dead, but they wanted John to be able to kill him. Okay. Like that one was for William. I wish I had two more for myself and for my brother type of thing. They wanted him to have that moment, but they also could not do that moment with him prisoner. They could not have him just execute him with his hands tied behind his back where he's defenseless, because that would not be honorable, and John would never kill somebody like that. He even says that it flashed in my head when we were at the prison, and he said he wanted him to kill him when he found that he had no hope of having Claire again. And he said, he went and he put the knife next to his throat, and he said, I am not somebody that would kill an unarmed prisoner, or something like that. So like, he sees that as dishonorable, and it would have put him in a catch-22. Her freeing him allowed him to then be able to kill him freely. So I feel like these were two plot things that drove her to do that, but character-wise, she would never have done that. Especially without talking to Jamie or anybody else, just like knowing he has tried to kill William a couple of times. He's now kidnapped John. He's been kept in this place for 7 weeks. So she's just going to let him go. They would have flipped out, if she had done that. So I don't know. That seemed very uncharacteristic of her to do. Okay. They said 7 weeks. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about the 7 weeks. They're galloping after the cold open. The cold open was fantastic. I was sitting there going, oh my God, like, I can't believe it's like 8 or 9 minutes of this episode is already gone just in the cold open. But it was a powerful cold open. And you notice, like, they brought in Neil Stapleton. You could actually read the letter that he said. I read the letter, and the letter had really bad stuff. I don't know if anybody stopped and actually read the letter. I did, but in the letter, like, it had things in there that have to be lies. Like, it says in there that he was forced. Neil Stapleton, Neil the cunt, said he was forced to be doing these acts, and it was like 4 different times. And then the one time, John lured 2 young boys to join them in like this debauchery. And that John would have never done that, so it's not only that he did a confession, he did a juiced up confession to even make it worse. And I think that's why John's like, I know he wouldn't have written this, because he wouldn't do that. And then the pained look on his face, and is he still alive and all that, you can sense there's more to their relationship than what we know. That John did have some kind of a connection with Neil Stapleton, and that's supposed to come out with this book, Black Chamber. Neil Stapleton is involved, and they have a affair or fling or whatever it is. They have some kind of physical connection in that, and somehow, like, he gets to know him. I think they work together for the Black Chamber, and that's kind of how they get connected to some extent. So that is coming, and so she kind of gave a nod to that here, because that backstory is going to connect. But I also wondered if all this is being put in, because I know what's going to happen. People are going to be like, we don't know this Neil Stapleton. We don't know any of this. Like, they're talking about stuff we don't know anything about. And I think they're going to complain, like, why did you need to do all that? Why did you need to take that amount of time for all of that? But I think if they're doing a series, like we're thinking this is going to be a spin-off series that they're talking about, if it's a Lord John one, they're probably going to get into Neil the cunt and these different people. And so when you see them, you'll go, oh, this is the guy that did that confession in Outlander. This is this guy. It'll feel like it somehow like had drizzles of it in the main show to connect to it. We even got a mention on her parents and Uncle Lamb and her father, when she was doing the two fathers explanation. And so it's kind of like a wink and nod to the Blood of My Blood series. And we did see in the previews that we see her again, little Claire, in the new episode. So we're probably going to see Uncle Lamb again. So I'm thinking, like, you're seeing them putting little sprinkles in, I think, for these other whatever they're doing. So I think part of that was what they were doing here. I expected them to maybe drop news about this series after this episode. David's doing all kinds of press, articles, all kinds of stuff. You see David all over the place doing stuff. So they're really getting his face out there and talking about his performance and his character and all of that. Anyway, in that men's journal, he was talking about how this episode was so important to him. He said, first of all, because it shows so many different colors of John's personality and sides to him that haven't even been revealed in the show. Like you're getting some of those nuances here. People are used to just seeing the very buttoned up together Lord John, the polite Lord John, the noble Lord John, the caring, giving a lot Lord John, but they're not used to seeing his hard ass side. They're not used to seeing him murder people, and they're not seeing him as this like this hero rolling in and doing stuff. So I thought this was good to show his ingenuity with the ring and all of that. We got a really good look at the ring too, which I liked. That he always talks about in cons. He always talks about how he loved that piece, how much detail went into it, and all of that. So they really got a good shot of it here. But I feel like they needed a bridge of sorts from where we left off in the last episode to this one. That's a big miss for me because, like, when she did her little voiceover, it felt very disconnected. And you see the three of them riding. I would have liked the line in there. What did I write? Here it is. I said, it's a straight line story, which is very different compared to the recent episodes we've seen, is that it's a single line of story with characters on that line. Almost, I said, like an S-shaped storyline, but one line. So it's kind of like we start off in Savannah, then we come around and we still are in that story because now we go to Jamie, Claire, and William heading to Savannah. So it's like we're getting basically, he's in this situation. The next thing that happens is they're making their way to Savannah. They land together with William and Amaranthus, get all that information, go over to rescue John, come back, to the house, have all of that conversation, and then come home. And then we get back into the ridge when Jamie and Claire are back at the ridge. So it's very driven in one line. We don't go back and forth anywhere. So in a way, that's good. But in a way, it was not. It was nice to kind of sit in one groove of a storyline instead of jumping around into different storylines because it gives you focus. However, it needs to satisfy your immediate questions at the same time. And it doesn't do that because then it throws you out. Your brain wants to connect. When you are, because I do this is part of what I studied, so it's when you give a person a situation and you go from this situation to that situation, the person automatically starts in their subconsciously filling in the holes to transition that. And you want to make that simple. You want to make it like somebody, like a little path, like breadcrumbs on a path that takes you from there to there. Instead of making the person have to pull out of it mentally, I go, well, wait a minute. Well, how far is this from when we left before? It threw me out because the VO had nothing to do with where they were going. It had nothing to do with what had happened before they left. It just was her saying, I started looking for ways to change it, their path. And I'm thinking, why are you talking about this now? And then in the VO, there's no mention of it should have been something like in her VO, she says, as I was going through looking for ways to avoid or somehow escape this doom that was coming for Jamie, I kept looking for cracks and blah blah blah. And then she could have like had another little piece of VO that said, but in the meantime, it was so joyful. We had a lovely week watching Jamie and William really connect as a father and son. I've hardly ever seen Jamie as happy as he's been in this last week or two. And then we received a letter. And then when she said, and then a letter came, and then they could have had them all walk in the door like they did at the end of that VO with her saying that, and then we would have dumped right into whatever the letter was about and all that kind of stuff. It just feels like we needed something to kind of talk about things with William and Jamie, like after we left them. And now we got this letter, and now got to not even have to tell us what the letter was about, just to say, it was a beautiful week or two of Jamie and William finally bonding. It was beautiful to see or something. And then we got a letter with some bad news. And then they could have showed them coming in the door and Martha saying, oh my gosh, thank God you're here. And we would have been like into the story, just like a little bridge. And these were the things that were missing, these little gluey bridge moments. And it was like a blessing that it was one line, storyline, or else it would have even been worse. That kind of thing bothers me. This whole season has been like that. Well, the last couple episodes have been like that, where you're like, oh, okay, like how do we get to this? Where are they going? Like, what are we doing? Okay, so that was one of my issues. And then I said, Second issue, you jump in with Jamie Clare and the strange VO, and it works at the end when Richardson dies. But while you're watching it, you think, why am I here? I don't know what we're doing. And now all of a sudden we're in Savannah. Kind of just throws you from where you left off. I said, how did they even know about that? How did she know about that? So while it was a single storyline, it was a bumpy ride. Your brain has to do a little more processing and filling in holes and making jumps, which then, of course, takes you out. Now you're not fully in it while your part of your brain is making those jumps. But I don't want over exposition. But she should have said something like, "It was wonderful seeing Jamie connect, and we had a lovely week or two together. Then we received a letter." And then we see them walk in. That's what I think they should have done. Its second issue, and this is my biggest issue, is that they are in Savannah and don't check on Marsley. And here they find out about Percy being involved in all this and still don't check on Marsley when they know she left with the intention to work with this guy. It just feels crazy that that would be the case. It doesn't feel in character. As I look at this, I keep trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's like my mentality. Like, I'm not going to judge. Like, you know how Blake does that sometimes? Like, he just goes, and he looks at just this episode. And if this questions weren't answered in the episode, it's just like it must suck. And that's not the case. It's not that it sucks. It just might be the long game. It might come out in 2 or 3 episodes why that was important to put there. And so I believe in that. And I don't make a judgment about where something wasn't answered until I get all the episodes and know it's truly not answered. You know what I mean? There is nothing else connected to this. And then I can go, yeah, okay, I'm going to take a half a point off because of that. So that's what I do when I look at these. You get a lot of the moments that you love, which we got in this episode, and you see the effort. They're trying to give you all these different moments and heartbeats and stuff. They're trying to put as much of that in there as they can. And I see that they're doing that, but at the same time, you want to enjoy it, not just see it. And that means you want a little bit of stuff around it. Okay, let me see what you guys said. Takes a Village is too modern. Even Claire would not have known this in the 40s and 60s. No. And really, she hated it. And she said that she said a couple times, and then finally they kind of made it just in like a little note that she says rather than, this whole big thing about why it takes a village and how it takes a village and like more focused into that phraseology. She got them to just basically make it like a 2-word, 3-word line in the middle of something else. We're not getting that in the book for sure. Okay, so the voiceover we hear says, I once believed time could be reshaped by sheer force of will, like water wearing at a stone, and that with Jamie's fate seemingly sealed in Frank's book, she is looking for any little glimmer of hope, any little crack that she could go through and take them through it. And then Claire and Jamie and William arrive at Lord John's house. We find out Lord John's been missing for 7 weeks. So at least then we know, okay, this amount of time went by, and most of that was probably them making their way there. It takes a while. So I'm not sure how long William was there before that. And I don't know how Amaranthus knew to contact him there. He never said anywhere where he was going. And Lord John did say he sent a letter to Mount Josiah. And so maybe the people there said he left here and said he was going to stop at Fraser's Ridge or going to Fraser's Ridge or something like that. Maybe that came back and Amaranthus somehow saw it and then somehow knew like how to get a note there. You know what I mean? It just seems very like, I don't know how that happened. It feels like very like osmosis or something unexplained. So it's a philological a little bit. Okay. The Village BS did take me out of the story right away. Yeah, I mean, I like the scene and I like the Claire William relationship in these last 2 episodes. It's been Claire that is first got him to stop in his tracks and go back and talk to his father. And now it's her trying to get him okay and understanding like, everybody just cares about you. Like that's it. You mean the world to both of them. And so you're getting all of this resolution and closure. It was beautiful in that way. And again, like I said, you just see them really kind of sealing up all of these arcs, which is really good, answering all the questions. I have a fee with this whole bit with the book. I'm jumping around the hell with it. That just as things come to me, that's how I'm going to talk. Sorry, this is so erratic. So him coming in the room once they're back at the ridge, and he comes in the room and she's up there alone, and he that was such a cute little scene, so playful. And what I really liked about it is when it comes out that she's writing the beginning of the book, right? The people disappear all the time, whatever, right? And of course you love it. You're like, oh my God, this is awesome. You kind of get this like circle back, to this moment of the very beginning of the story. And here we are near the end, almost at the very end of the penultimate episode, heading into the finale of the entire show. And we see this scene of her by herself, and he's like, "What are you doing by yourself up here?" She's looking for some peace. He comes over, jumps on the bed. "What you doing? Let me see." As she's kind of holding it to herself, just let me see. And he gets his glasses and he starts to read it. He says, "It's a hell of a beginning." And he says, "You're writing your story." And she says, "I'm writing our story," which I love that because I thought that's a great little nod to the constant argument of whose story it is. And it's Claire's story. She should be the star. And blah, blah, blah. No, it's his story. It's their story and all this. So I feel like that was like a little wink to the constant bantering about that. But then also, I think because of Diana said she didn't write that scene. Because a lot of people didn't like it. Some people thought that it was going to be one of these things where the whole thing was just a book or whatever. And she's like, no, no, no. She's like, I didn't write that. But she didn't sound mad about it or anything. She says, you'll understand why that's there in the final episode. Like that was written and put in there by them and added. She didn't write it. And that we'd understand it better in the next episode. So what I'm thinking they're doing, this is just a thought, the next episode is titled The Line of the Very First Book, the end of the very first book. The end of the first book is them coming out of the mineral pools underneath the abbey. And her just had told him that she's pregnant. And they said, as they walked up out of the womb of the earth, with what this child that basically that she was carrying, she says, as we came out to the surface, then the world was all around us, fresh with possibility or something like that. It kind of ends like that, right? And that's the title of the episode. So I'm thinking what they're doing is they're going to have her writing this beginning that we saw. And then at the end of the next episode, it may be that she's sitting there writing in her book and we see her writing the lines like, and the world was all around us, fresh with possibility, and that like she finished that first book. And it's kind of going to have that full circle feel. And that's why they're doing it and that'll get the title. Usually they say the title in some way in the episode. So that gets the title in the episode as the close. It's the close of the first book. And we got the open of the first book in this episode. So I think that's how they're using it. We'll see. What took me out was Claire saying the F word and not G. I had the same comment. I said the same thing. I liked when she saw he was getting ready to go in and she was like, fuck. It reminded me of season 1 when she says that when she has to get up there and sing in the search episode. It's almost like she says that when she has to now do something that makes her get out of her comfort zone a little bit. That she's going to have to face this guy down like one-on-one now. But I said, man, I would have really liked, alas, Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ. I don't think she's going to say it in the next episode. So it would have been like a great, like, your last time hearing that. I mean, maybe they will in the next episode, but I just thought that would have been great to put in there. But the line with the F word made me think of the search, which she had to get up and sing. So I kind of like that. Okay, Mary says, takes a village is an African proverb. It predates Hillary Clinton by centuries. Okay. Given Claire's travels with Uncle Lamb, it doesn't seem outside the realm of possibility that Claire would know of it. It's a common philosophy in many cultures. Oh, okay. Like, I'm sure it was said though, but I don't think it's something like that was in popular use as a phrase like it is today. Like I even make a joke about because I have big breasts and I always say like it takes a village to raise these girls. It's one of my sayings I always say. So even people joke about it, like it's so common phrase, but I don't think it was talked a lot that she would come out and say it like that. I wasn't really bugged by it, but it didn't. I definitely knew it wasn't her, because she doesn't like that phrase. It annoys her. She has said that before. So I know she made a point in talking about the episode before the episode aired, and she said they took out a really good like exchange between Jamie and Lord John in that scene that they had, and they put in a big sappy line bit from Claire in another scene. So she said, so they changed a few things. So that's something she pointed out, because she really doesn't like that line. I love the whole look back scene. Oh, it was so good. It was raining hard that day when they were filming the scene. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that, Kim. Like, we could tell, like, that was all going to be the little porch thing. We saw that being filmed. We saw the rain, and you could even see the rain when they walked up in the up to the house, and they were stepping up. You saw the little puddles on the porch. You could see little patches of wet. So even though they were making it look very sunny in that moment when they were walking up, it had been raining, and they had been. And I think when they did the rain, when the rain was coming down, that's when they were trying to shoot those scenes that they were doing. Now it looked like Lord John's done. I don't think we're going to see Lord John again in the finale. What do you guys think? I don't think so. But I do think we're going to see William, even though they made it look like we weren't. The way that it was shot, it was like it was a goodbye. Kind of felt like we're done with this now. But in the previews, you do see William ride to the ridge. I look like that's where he was riding. He comes up on his horse. It's a quick clip. So we do see William again, but I don't think we see John again. But you guys let me know. Oh, the rain. Yeah, that was a great choice, and it's raining hard. you know it wasn't just a little bit of whatever. It was really coming down. As a matter of fact, they may have even made it look even more so, because it really looked raining, and they look so unprepared for the rain. They're like, nobody's wearing a coat, nobody's wearing a hat. They're just sitting there being rained on really hard with no protection. It was weird. Sarah says, I loved what we got. I just missed the things we didn't get. Yeah, my complaint, I loved what we got to. I loved this episode. I really did. But I did feel like something obvious, like checking on Marsley. They should have known. Everybody was going to question that. You're in Savannah. You find out the guy that your daughter was going to deal with on this whole thing is in the middle of this, and she was going into a dangerous situation. Wouldn't you at least, like, I know it wasn't the focus of this episode. They kind of wanted to keep the focus hard on this dynamic between the Frasers and Lord John and William, and like get that really tucked in and resolved and stuff. So they didn't want to like divert the focus onto other stories. But I feel like logically, in this situation, there's no way in the world we shouldn't have a touching a base of Marsley. The other thing that made me upset about it, about not getting the glue stuff, not getting any kind of transition of that they got this letter and now they're going here, or any kind of a check in on Marsley or anything. This was the shortest episode of the season. I was so mad. When I turned on the TV, it was like 53 minutes or 54 minutes. It was and I was like, what happened to 1 hour? That extra 6 or 7 minutes would have done wonders for this episode in getting those like little connectivity things, that are missing. So I just wish they would have done that. I mean, a few minutes more isn't going to kill nobody. I'm hoping that we get all of this stuff that we were missing in like the Outlander Untolds, the little extra scenes they film, or the deleted scenes, or whatever, hoping anyway. I'd really like to get in the DVD a director cut where like they show everything in line, and like as an extra bonus, or even if they cut it together and sold it separately. I would buy it to just see an episode that looks extended with all the stuff plugged in where it goes. I would get extra. I would pay extra a lot to get that. I think that would be awesome. I'd be willing to lay down whatever, to buy something like that, because it would be very special to get the series with all of those extra scenes plugged in. I know it would be a lot of work editing, but they could charge for it. And the people that are hardcore fans that really want to see this other way with everything included, they would pay for it. People that really want to see that, I would pay for it. you know? I mean, we go to cons and all this other crap. I would certainly buy that. That would be awesome. Martina says, was anybody else a little underwhelmed by the Lord John Grey rescue? It did feel fast. It felt like there was no obstacles. It was very wham bam, thank you, ma'am. I mean, I love the shots of it. I love the, like the two little heads coming up. Like, oh, I love them working as a team. I got a little freaked out when the show first came on and it said there was a suicide. I even stopped and did a little comment like, I haven't started this yet, but I just got to the scene where it gives you the warnings and there's suicide. I said, who is committing suicide? Your brain goes to the last time they were on a rescue mission, the person they were trying to rescue. I knew she wouldn't actually make John commit suicide, but it almost gave you like, I bet it made them other people feel like that when they saw that warning. Like, oh my God, don't tell me they're going to try to rescue him again. He's going to be dead. Another person that they rescue that ends up being dead from suicide because they give up hope. But I knew she would never write that. So I just thought it was odd to see it. I was wondering who was going to die. I can't stop thinking about what will happen with Fanny and being a time travel. I know. That was weird that they ended it. It was like almost the cliffhanger of the last episode. Like not a heavy cliffhanger, but like it kind of left you with a question going into the next episode of, okay, what's this going to lead to? And then nothing happens with it. No explanation. No, hey, I touched this rock and, just medically ask Claire about it. Nothing. So that was weird too. Sarah says she was a bit of a pointless character in the end. Who? Fanny or Amaranthus? Fanny, I think they have something planned. She may be part of. I feel like there's going to be something that she does with the time travel thing that comes out in some way. Either that she's going to end up with Julian Henry, or something. I don't know. She's going to have to travel or do something because why are they showing that without any kind of conversation? In the preview, you see something with her holding her necklace and just crying and Claire holding her. So I don't know if that had to do with the conversation. Kathy says she cheered when Jamie looked back and smiled. Diana would not touch anything faith related in her episode, don't you think? Yeah, no, she said that she wasn't touching any of that. You mean about the stone? That's why they didn't talk about the stone. Her name, Kim, the director's name is Emer Conroy. She's a woman. She has one of those names that you don't know what it is, but she has some really interesting, very intimate in the way that she shots. Like with John waking up in the boathouse and his grogginess and seeing things fuzzy from his perspective and looking at his hand, and then like the way they shot that to really put you in his head of being completely disoriented and trying to process. You got that feeling with it. It was very well shot to really put you in his POV, and then kind of seeing a blurry Richardson form and seeing him there and having to think on his feet coming out of just being completely passed out. She is the director, Emer Conroy, for this episode and the next. So she didn't direct the last episode. They study that. They know what they need to lift off of. I'm sure they watched the previous episode. I am shipping for Fanny to be with William in book 10. I am too. Yeah, she's still too young here, but I'm hoping in the book we do a little bit of a time jump. Because understand, in Bookland, you could be young. She could be 16 or 17 in the book and be with William. You know what I mean? At that point, because like I said, Marsley in the book was 15 when she and Fergus married, and Fergus was 30. So like these things happen with, it's not like today where that statutory rape or whatever, it's that was the norm of that time. Jamie is just like, I'm not going to betroth any of the girls. It was over like Lizzie and stuff until they're 16. Like that in his mind is when men should be allowed to fight and when women should be allowed to be married. Don't do either one of those before that age, in his mind. But that's still young, in our mind, in our perspective. But that was normal for the time. As a matter of fact, that was like a stricter thing almost. Like, no, you're not even gonna entertain it until you're at least 16. You can't get hung up on what today's would do. But like Fanny is already like probably close to 15 when we end the book. 14 or 15. So she's not that far off from being 17, 18 by the time we get through the revolution and everything's said and done. And in the book, it's not a like a relation situation either. And also her attitude about everybody else's attitude that they could have been related and like having a big hang up about that. You kind of can tell that it's not a big hang up for Diana. Like she doesn't look at it like that because she's very sunk into the time. And people did marry like that in the family. Somebody that's a second cousin or their aunt, like an aunt or a sister of an aunt or something. Like you saw that a lot, in families and clans and things like that. So okay, Lynn says she thinks the only reason they showed Fanny and the hot stone was simply to support her being Claire's grandchild. I doubt if much will come of it. They don't have time with only one episode. Yeah, but I feel like they already gave enough evidence of that. I think it's just to let us know she also has the gene. But if they don't use it for anything, or we're not going to see her again anywhere or anything, then I feel like it wasn't necessary. Now maybe she'll end up popping into what the prequel somewhere, and we'll be like, oh wow. I don't know. Sarah says we're just supposed to infer from seeing R at Lollybrock that he discovered time travel through Rob Cameron. Who's R? Richardson. Okay, Richardson. Yeah, since we saw Richardson at Lollybrock, he discovered time travel through Rob Cameron. When Claire said she was from 45 and 68, he could have said he was from the 80s and he knew a guy called Rob, etc. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there should have been some more connective to that idea. They didn't need to introduce that he was part of that group if we didn't need it for any other reason. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't need to know that if it doesn't have any import, or connectivity to the story, then why even bother getting into it and having them in the scene? It kind of feels like you introduce something and then there's no follow through to something that you took the time to introduce. I don't care what you do, but make it make sense and make it have a purpose. Those are my things. Make it feel in character, make sense, and have a purpose. Don't just do stuff for no reason and waste time. That's my thing. In the books, when he visited her at the shop where she was helping Sophronia, did Richardson allude to knowing Claire was yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, that was another thing. Like, this whole exchange between Claire and Richardson, that all happens with John in the book, where he tells his whole story and about the slavery and how he's there to try to, stop because his great grandmother was a slave and blah, blah, blah. Like, that whole conversation happens with John in the book. But they moved it to Claire because it ties in with Claire looking for hope, or whatever. But it doesn't make sense with Claire because then why would he already knew what Claire was because he was all involved with this scene of them looking through their letters and knowing, where they're from and that they're time travelers and then like searching the house. Well, he was one of the guys searching the house. When they came out, he was one of those guys that was inside when she said two bastards in my house or whatever she said. So he was there. He knows what they are. He knows what the parents are, all of that. He even knows about William being her brother and all of that because that was all in the letters. And they probably talked about it. So I just feel like him actually acting like surprised that she was any of this and not mentioning her daughter. I feel like there was a disconnect in that. If he would have told Claire that about knowing Bree was from the 80s, she might have shot him on sight. She might have. She might have if she knew that he was part of the thing that attacked them at Lollybrock. She would have like went nuts because look, she's not going to tolerate people trying to attack her kids. I mean, as it is, they attack William. Nicole says, "Yeah, you're right. It would make them uncle and niece. Really annoys me if that they did this." Yeah, in the book though, it's not put out there that she's related. So I mean, even though Diana was thinking about doing it in a separate novella, that they would never know it. Like, it still isn't done. Actually, it's not canon now, and it may not be. She may not do it. But really, even if it was, it would only be a half niece because it's only one person that they share, not two. So I don't know. I mean, it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers other people if it turned out to be true, which because they wouldn't even know it. It'd be something unknown to them. They're not doing it to be creepy or whatever. And the thing is, the way they kind of talk about it is like blood is drawn to blood. That's kind of how Diana writes her books as well. And definitely time travelers are drawn to each other. So they constantly are drawn to interact and stuff. Okay. Natalia, are you new here, Natalia? I don't recognize your name, but hello, welcome to the Hive if you are. She says, I swear it was the same actor playing Brianna's masked tag. Yeah, it was. It was him. I think the showrunners ran out of time with Kat and Sam wanting to move on as a result of season 8 being a rather short one. No, I think on that story that they begged to get this last season. They pitched it and it only got approved last minute. They were halfway through season 7 thinking it was the last season when they got the approval to give them 10 episodes to do a real proper finish to the story where questions are answered and you feel like you're in a good place to say goodbye and all that. So they gave them a 10 ep season to do that in. But I really did expect longer episodes on some of these episodes, like they did for Blood of My Blood. I looked at Blood of My Blood and said, okay, here's what they do for a 10 ep season. Like this is how they treat that. And they all had, like, Blood of My Blood was all at least an hour to maybe a little more than an hour every episode. So it was, I expected that. And like, I feel like we're not getting that. We're getting, 50 something minutes, but now we're going to have an hour 20 for the finale. So I'm really looking forward to having a nice long episode. It's not going to all be King's Mountain and the healing of that. I mean, that can't be the whole thing. Probably going to be the first half, and the second half is whatever else they have planned toward their ending. They must have really wanted Richardson to seem sympathetic. In the books, he tells William that he knows. I know. That's what it is. They really wanted Claire to be able to have a sympathy enough with him to let him go and try. There was also another weird thing that happened in that scene. Right before they left, you saw Jamie put the key on the table and he kind of gave Claire a look. Like they exchanged a look, almost to make me think that he wanted, like, I got a feeling that when you read his letter that they read at John's house, where, he said, I know you're going to be here for a short time and then you're going to be making a speech in Congress and I want not Congress, Parliament. And I want you to say the things that are in the addendum in this letter, in this packet. And basically, he gave him what he wants him to say. And if not, this will be turned into all of the press in London or whatever. So in there, like he basically was saying things, talking almost like you're going to be here for a short time, and then you're going to return, and you're going to make an address in Parliament about your opinions of the war. And this, I want you to say this instead of what you were going to say. It came off. You saw an exchange of a look between Jamie and Claire, like he's talking about things in the future as if he already knows what's going to happen. And they kind of gave each other a look like this. And so I'm thinking that maybe they went in with a suspicion that there was more to this, and maybe he was leaving her with him, like, and put the thing down. He gave her a look, like, see what you can find out, from him, like you can talk one on one and see what you can find out. That I almost got that impression. Did anybody else get that impression? That he purposely had, like, got everybody cleared. You go check for other guards. I'm gonna go get the boat or whatever. And then he kind of looked at Claire and he put the key down. And I thought, is he trying to say, like, find things out from him, or is that just me reading more into it? Let me know what you think. I don't know. It's hard to detect that. I kept saying, don't do it, Claire. It did. It felt out of character. Yeah, she's not that gullible. Well, you know what I kept thinking? Do you not remember what happened with Bonnet? It felt like Bonnet all over again, where Bonnet, gave the sob story to Jamie, and Jamie gave him a chance and let him go. And then he ended up raping Brie and doing all this horrible shit. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, learn the lesson. If you capture this and you know this person has done bad things in the past, don't get involved with freeing them, under any circumstances. It didn't go well the last time you did this. Patty says she felt it would have been more believable if he had somehow gotten loose instead of Claire setting him free. That's good. That's a good thing. Like if they had done ropes instead of whatever they did, manacles, where you needed a key. If they had done it where he got tied, and you see, like, as he's talking to her, like his back of his hand had like some type of a sharp thing that he was working through the rope that she didn't know. And then instead of her letting him go, he just went to escape. And that's when John shot him. So I feel like you're right. Like, I would have rather that been that way. If you needed to get him free, and you needed John to be able to have a way to shoot him without losing on or doing it because now he's free. I would have rather been that way than her let him go. That felt very out of character for her to do that. I'd be like, give me your word. That's like somebody who has been arrested 5 times for Grand Theft Auto and say, look, I'm going to give you the keys to my car because you need to run to the store and grab something. Give me your word you're going to come back with my car. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to do that. Diane says, good to know DG fought to keep the dialogue she knew the characters would have used. So frustrating to follow along with empathy for our beloved author and characters. Yeah, I think that I really loved the episode. Don't get me wrong. My only issues really with the episode was if 1 or 2 lines that felt a little clunky, and they were pretty much the ones that were swapped. They didn't sound like Diana lines. Whereas that part from the time they entered the house, all through that, the connection between Jamie and John, like that whole series, that funny, poignant, that you go from being laughing hysterically, literally, you'll hear my first break, not my first break of the whole thing, but I immediately, like one of the breaks with that scene where Claire is like going, do you love him, and all this, and he says, damn woman, and he starts off, I'm like laughing hysterically from that whole scene. And you hear me saying that. And then the next time I cut in, I'm in tears, from the whole John and Jamie scene. And it's like, I sound like a crazy person because I go from laughing, to like being tearful. And that's the thing, that's signature Diana. She will get you so like poignant, going, oh, crying, laughing, like one break from the other. She's so good at evoking emotion when you're watching, when you're reading her words and stuff. Even when you're reading, you can go through a whole chapter and cry, laugh, smile, do all that all in the same chapter. you know, she takes you on the ride. Natalia says, I think the showrunners have false notions of political correctness. They could not make Ulysses a character with flaws, or Richardson being against slavery yet still a scoundrel. You have to have Diana's talent to portray this level of complexity in a believable and relatable way. Excellent comment. Yes. I agree with that 100%. They really do they do walk a line. But the thing is, when they don't and they try to like be time appropriate or appropriate for the period, they'll get slammed because people are like look at it with the eyes of the modern eyes. I can't tell you how many times, and my group is very good about this because like I talk to them about this a lot. Like they understand it, you know what I mean? But the general public out there, the general fandom, I've gotten into so many back and forths with people saying, you understand, like that's normal for the 18th century. Yeah, but I'm watching it. Yeah, but you're watching a period. You're watching a time period where this didn't happen. Where if you didn't have a man around, you needed a man around in this time period. I'm all about, hey, women independence and voting and, suffrage and all that stuff. But at that time, it was like the norm was and Diana has said this, and this is what bothers me about the Marsley thing. Like, if you were alone, that's what's depicted with the Sylvia story. If you were alone, without a man and without male family members, the men out there see you as vulnerable, like you are easy prey, easy pickings, because there's nobody like giving you protection. You're either going to get forced into being a whore, or they take you as that. You're taken like that, being alone, like Brie, being alone, walking through, an inn in a bar and stuff. Like people will see that like, oh, okay, if she was married or she had family, that she wouldn't be doing this. She must be available to access. She's easy pickings. And so it was just something you didn't do. Women didn't do that. If they did, they had a very hard life because they knew they were vulnerable. But people like Reshma. Reshma is very, and I love her stuff. She's funny, but she's very feminism person. And if anything that doesn't strike that chord, she'll kind of get on instead of her understanding like women didn't do that. That wasn't normal then. You were attacked for being that way if you were too bold and everything. I mean, the woman almost got burned as a witch. It's just ridiculous the way they were in that time. But it was what it was. You can't project our current modern times to that and our current attitudes about women and about slaves and about black people and about whatever. All of those things that we have fought for now, we were still fighting this in the 60s. We were still fighting for things in the early 20th century. So even like in our modern history, we remember what time where women and people of color and all still had stereotypes, and now like they want to go back to it. So you have that now. At that time, that was the norm, and you have to like understand and put yourself in that time. It's hard with the show because they're moving so fast that it's hard to immerse in the norms of the time. But it's still what you know. Let me look at the comments. There's so much I haven't touched on. Yeah. Do you think this is the last time we see William or Lord John? Patty, I'm thinking we don't see Lord John again, but we will see William again. I think William is going to come to the ridge. Because in the previews, I froze when Jamie was giving them the speech, like, we're going to go and fight this. And everybody's like, yeah. I was shocked to see Hiram in there. Did you see Hiram Crombie as in the people going out to fight on Kings Mountain? At the same time, I didn't see any William in that crowd, but I still think he comes back to the ridge for something. Maybe it's after he does that. If he does come to help in the fight, it might be that he does this rally cry as a final muster thing, and then when he comes back to the house and they start to get ready to go, William comes riding in. He could be like that, where he's just not there for that scene. Shall we talk about Claire writing the story? As I heard the prologue, it took my breath away, but I also have a premonition of the showrunners are thinking of pulling a Deus Ex Machina in the episode 10, the whole story we've seen being Claire's book, or even worse, it was a dream. No, that's not going to happen. First of all, Diana has said that's not going to be what it is because people have been asking her. But also, she said, you'll find out why. And I think it's because they want to sync up the final line of the first book, which is the title of the episode. And I think they are writing the beginning here so that you can see what the end of the story is. And we'll hear that line said as she's writing the end of her story. Or maybe they won't even hear it said. Maybe we'll see the words as she's writing it or something like that. And we'll get the end of the first book of how like she started the book and this is the end of that first book. And that might be how it ends, So that's why they included the nod to the beginning in this episode. I think that's why they put that scene in. It is connected to something in the finale. So why do we think they're missing all the connectors or bridges? Each episode obviously goes through multiple viewing and edits. Isn't anyone on the post-production team noticing this? If we do, then I would think they do. I almost wish they had a focus group, like a little focus panel that isn't, because sometimes when you're so in something and you're so immersed in it yourself, it's hard to have an objective view and like see how people are going to see something and information they need. I mean, people that write shows, I know like from the writing that I would do, that's like one of the things you're looking at your audience and all of the markers for your audience and what those people need to understand to grasp your message and things like that. And so I would think that they would think like that. Okay, we need to put a scene in here that tells you how they got the information. And I think that was important. And it could have been easily just tucked into her VO. They didn't even have to show it. They could have just, as they were riding, explained why they're riding in the VO and say, made my heart full to see Jamie finally have these moments he's loved with his son for the last week or two until we got the letter from Savannah. And then have them walk in. Like the next thing we hear after that is them coming in and Amarantha saying, thank God you're here, blah, 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 blah. Just to kind of make you feel like you're connecting this last episode to this episode, No. Mary says, I don't know if they will do this, but if they have Jamie drafting his will, they can tell us what's up with the Marsley. as he writes whatever provision he's making for her and the children. Yeah, I guess so. Natalia says Matt and Meryl should have picked up on holes in the story as it relates to Marsley and other things. It's their job. I know they had to make tough choices with editing, but not to the point of cutting scenes that disrupt the flow of the story. Yeah, you know what else though, Natalia, on that, and I love your name by the way. You can understand talking about a village. It's very different. Diana is the king and god and queen and all rule over her world when she writes a book alone. Nobody tells her what to do. Nobody has any say. She can do anything she wants. I mean, even her editors don't tell her no to things anymore because they know better. You know, she's advanced enough. So she is in complete control of everything solo. It is the exact opposite when you're talking about the show. You got a ton of cooks in the kitchen. You know what I mean? And what you might want to do, the network strikes down or somebody else strikes down and they kind of revise and they revise trying to get this out and where everybody is okay with it. There's a lot more that goes into it than just one person making a decision. I've really gotten so annoyed with ever since 807 with all this pile on Matt. Like he is the only person that has a say in anything. You know, it's not that case. He's the showrunner, but he's not the author like it is with a book where he has final say of everything. It's a lot of times he has to deal with the network and what they want to have on there, and then Sony and the different executive producers, and then the writer room is a very much a collaboration. And yeah, he has final say on how that goes if there's like down to a say, but then he has to take what his say is and take it to stars and take it to whoever. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to it, and also you got the time. Like Diana can write. I know one of her chapters was like a 140-page chapter, you know? And I was like, oh, this chapter goes on forever. It's one chapter. So she can, if you look at a chapter like an episode, I know it's not the same thing. But if you think about that, she has complete flexibility to make a 2-page chapter or a 100-page chapter. You don't have that with making an episode. You have all the strict time cuts. You got so much to squeeze in. I just feel like what they should have done was drop some things that were not necessary. If it all it is like much ado about nothing and it's resolved in half an episode, it just feels like, do we really need that for the story? Just want to go on a couple scenes that I did not talk about because I had planned to talk about the scenes in order. The one time I could easily do that because they all were in order and they all were involved this one storyline. I still jumped around. Okay, so I talked about them leaving. All right. We find out it had been 7 weeks. William asked about Uncle Hal, and Amarantha said there's been a letter that he was delayed, but something had arrived for him. What is everybody hearting me for? Did I say something special? Natalia says, I wonder what network would not just agree on 16 episode season, and since they probably have filmed enough for a full-fledged last season, instead they just had to resort to suboptimal editing. Yeah, I mean, they are really sticklers about the time. I mean, I've heard Matt talk about that a lot. And then there's also other issues. There's issues about availability when they're shooting this certain area, like actors unavailable. So part that involved that actor has to be written around and taken out, you know, and there's like all kinds of things. A place that in the book it was this certain way, but there's no way to replicate that on set. You know, they don't have that type of situation to be able to do that in the book that's in the book. So they have to kind of do a workaround. And to us that are book readers, we go, you know, why didn't they do this? What was the problem? But there's so many logistics to everything, you know, on their end. It would really be great if they did a documentary of some kind, like the making of Outlander, and did a full documentary showing some of the problems they encounter and behind the scenes of all of the different stuff over the years. I think it would be a great thing to do if they actually have somebody documenting it, which I doubt they do, like problems they run into, like kind of walking with, spending like a day or two or a week, an episode shooting or whatever with the showrunner to see kind of the things that they have to deal with and the normal problems that come up and backlash from the stars network that they can't have this and they want a black person family because that's going to show more of the dynamic of opposition and drama than what Diana had in her book in this situation. It lets them point this up visually and point that up visually. Plus, they always want the visual for TV. And so sometimes they want to make it a little more visually enticing to see it rather than what you have to have when you're reading it. And there's like all kinds of stuff that goes into it. So it's really, there's things that we're not thinking of. It's easy to just pick one person to blame, but there's a lot that goes into each episode, a lot that goes into these decisions. And sometimes it's just logistics, like something's not available. Janine says, here's a simple example. F808, I think it was, when Jamie goes into the trading post to show Cunningham the code letter. Oh, no, that was way back. I think that was 5 or 6. You see him walking out, no hat. When you see him walking out, he's got a hat under his arm. They have missed many similar situations over the years. So in spite of the multiple viewings and edit, they miss a lot. Yeah, like those little tiny continuity things. I was looking for that with the wet, when they did the water thing. Because at first I thought when William came in, it looked like he wasn't wet. But then when I looked at him again closer, I could see his ponytail was wet a little bit. And I could tell that, like, yeah, he had come out of the water. I thought they were just going to show him without that, but they showed it, So I really do I feel like Percy wasn't in on it the whole time. I think he was in on it when he was just trying to make the arrangement for Richardson to kind of be somewhere where John could intercept him. I think Richardson turned it around on him and then got him involved in this ploy by threat. So yeah. Even 2 more episodes. Judy, even if they gave them a full hour for every episode, you know, just 5 more minutes of each episode would have done wonders. They could have used that and these transitional moments to make it, feel a little more smoother instead of jolty. He says he has a message for William and he had to talk to him in person. But then when we see Percy in the next scene, which was great, Percy says, I had no choice. And he says, I wouldn't have left John. Like he would have basically wanted to stay with him. But he said he wanted me to go because he had this for you, and he has this like thing that he gives him. So they gave Percy a little more of a sympathetic vibe to him. He was very pathetic though, and pitiful. You could tell he was stripped more of any artifice and trying to really just speak from his heart to John. Nicole says she really liked the scene with Jamie and Claire in bed. It seemed so like a full circle. It really did. I really liked that too. Shockingly, because we find out that Diana didn't actually write it. It wasn't part of her input there. It felt like them. It felt like they're young. The tenor of Jamie acting almost like when she met him, like a early 20s, and just like, oh, I came in for some piece. Oh, and he walks over and plops on the bed. What you writing? It was just this very playful, her like, putting it into her chest. And it felt like they weren't their age. They were back in the age of when they were first connecting, back when this happened. And when they would tease each other and she was talking about eating grass and they would banter and have like little funny bits. It kind of felt that way, that young when they were young. And so to read this, the beginning of their story, the way they were acting fit with what the subject was. Do you know what I mean? I really liked that. That was a nice touch. And it felt authentically like them, that scene. So whoever wrote it did a good job. It felt like those characters. Like Diana could have wrote that. So William reads the letter, and in it it says that he wants him to do the speech, including this information. And then he says, if you don't do it, these letters will be released to the public. William reads Neil's confession. And he's like, this is about my father's proclivities. Apparently, it's about to become public knowledge. And Jamie says, not if we find John first. We need to find every copy and burn them. And then Claire picks up the letter and looks at Jamie and says, P. Wainwright. And Jamie says, I guess that's our friend Percy. And immediately I'm thinking of Marsley in that moment going, yeah, you better run over and check on your daughter. Like this is the dude that she was supposed to be dealing with to make this whole thing happen. You should be concerned about that. Anyway, so the next scene we get is William bursting through Percy's office door, followed closely by Claire and Jamie. And he throws Percy against the cabinet, grabs him by the throat. And he's like, where is he? Where is my father? And Percy claims he doesn't know. William punches him. And he starts to fall down, and Jamie picks him up and holds him for, for William to punch again. I'm like, I love this father son duo dynamic that we're getting, which I thought was great. Then Jamie starts punching him, gut punching him. And then Percy finds like, Richardson. And he looks at him. And you could tell William was just beyond himself pissed. He was just like, I will kill him and you. You know, like he was so pissed. Like, this is the dude that had him almost killed with his Hessians. I'll send him on the dismal swamp to be abducted. You know, he's already done enough crap. Told Claire that she was going to get arrested. That's why they got like he's been fiddling in their life now for a while, and now this. So William was just like done. Claire starts to say, "Where are they keeping him?" And Percy said he was blindfolded both ways. All this is from the book as well. We find out that he was blindfolded. He said it took a couple hours and they were in a boathouse. He was actually supposed to wait and not even bring this over until Hal actually arrived. But he was trying to get them the information as quickly as he could, you know. He says he wanted you to have this. Never said the message, I love you. That bothered me in the book, too. William immediately sees this ring and says to Jamie, I've never seen him not with this ring on his hand. And Jamie takes it, looks in the light. The Pharos is inscribed. And he's like, it's Greek. And then William's like, a lighthouse. So you get the whole little, how they see each other in this sophisticated light. They know Greek and all. Claire asks if there has any significance to John. He said no. And that he must be being kept in a lighthouse. Percy warns him Richardson is insane. So William guesses that he's on this Tybee Island. Percy implores William to get Hal to do what Richardson says. And I love this part where William stops at the door and he says, if we don't find him, or we find him and he's dead, there'll be no safe place for you where I won't find you. You know, I got the whole Jamie vibe, like the badass coming out in William. I loved it. Don't be getting a double Fraser Fury flying on you, Percy. You ain't gonna be able to handle that. They row up to the island. I'm just kind of skimming down and seeing if there was anything I really wanted to say before I close this. William and Jamie bring the boat in, help clear off the boat. I liked all the Spanish moss stuff that was all over the place. It looked very Savannah. And that was all done by hand, added, because that's not in Scotland. And so all of the grounds people that prepped the scene area, like hand put all of that on. So that was cool. It gave the vibe. And they see the lighthouses across the water. And the three of them creep through the woods, and Jamie and William have their guns in their hand. And Claire, they see somebody, and Claire whips out her little spyglass, and she says, somebody's, looks like they're fishing. William looks and he says, it's Richardson. He said, the bastard is going fishing. Like, he's keeping my father, he's just having a good old time fishing, which was funny. And it was a nice transition in that way from the idea of the fishing and all of that stuff between William and Jamie in the last episode. So that made kind of like a little tie-in a little bit, a little teeny bridge. Claire knows Richardson is alone, and Jamie looks at William, and they decide that they're going to try to find him because he's not there then if he's here. And I kind of had a little weird feeling about that. Like, they're going to leave her to be like the lookout to watch. I mean, I understand they can't just stay there because they're trying to rescue him. But at the same time, I kind of thought like, okay, you're leaving her to deal with this guy alone. So that was a little bit odd. So she keeps an eye on him, and all of a sudden he starts packing up. And she's like, fuck. She starts to go across. And then I love the way this was shot too. If you look at it, you got all kinds of cool shots. You got one shot where she has the gun and you're like in a wide shot where you see the lighthouse between them away, and you see her showing like in a showdown. Looks like they're biting today or something. And he's just like, Mrs. Fraser. There was the Mrs. Fraser we were waiting for. Meanwhile, Jamie and William come in like they're like, you know, pop their heads up out of the where they look like now they're like totally father son doing all of these motions together. One's creeping around on one side, one's creeping around on the other side. They work together to take out the guards. So you keep really getting that father son duo working together on something, you know, partnering. And I love that. All of these things were all like the feels. He breaks down the door, and Lord John is there, and he's bearded, and he just looks up at him, and he says, you look good with a beard, John. And John's annoyed and he says, "You're no oil painting yourself." And I was thinking, actually, John, he looks damn good and you know it. In the shot. He's all wet. He's got his little pirate shirt on by himself. He's got the wet hair down. He looks fine. And he's like, "You don't look like no oil painting." Yes, he does. He looks better than an oil painting. And you know it, John. You were thinking, holy moly, when he walked in. And then William comes in, gives him his ring. And you can see, like, it was this moment where the last time they left, he was screaming, "I don't have a father. You're not my father." He walked out. And that was the last thing. So they had left with all of this kind of tension between them. And so they look at each other and he pulls out the ring. And John had this, like, it was such a tender moment without much being actually said. He takes the ring and then he hugs him. And I was like, oh, and you see Jamie kind of look at him and smile, like he was so glad to see them making reunion and sees the love there between them. Meanwhile, Claire, like little cool collected Claire, as she's holding him at gunpoint, Richardson spins around. "Mrs. Fraser, what are you doing here?" And she's like, "Yes, it's Mrs. Fraser now, but circumstances being what they are, I'm here on behalf of my former husband rather than my current one." Oh my God. She's just like was Miss Cool. And then Jamie, John, and William are walking in the boathouse, and Claire bursts in with the gun held on Richardson. And Jamie and William are like with their weapons drawn. And I love Jamie's face when he sees what has here happening with her gun trained, with bringing in Richardson, by herself. He just looks almost horrified that this could have went wrong so much. We're lucky, like, she's okay. He didn't turn on her. He could have killed her. Whatever. You could see he was like a little unnerved. And I wanted to say, have you met Claire? Jamie handcuffs Richardson to a pole, asks what they will do with this scoundrel, John asks. And Jamie says they're going to deliver him to the court martial because he's betrayed both sides. And he said they can fight about who gets to kill him. And Richardson asks how they found out about him. And she says, Percy Beauchamp. He's like, that immoral snit or something like that. He makes a comment. And Claire asks him, what are you even doing? Last time I saw you, like you were working for the American side, the freedom side. And then they get into this whole thing about, well, America, if it has victorious, well, everybody won't be free. And, how do you feel about slavery, Mrs. Fraser? And they start to go into this whole back and forth about that. He starts to tell her how his great grandmother was a slave. This is all from the book, only just told differently with Claire. And then Richardson goes off about how America's going to continue to enslave people for 85 years. And right away, Claire's just looking at him. And he says, then it'll lead to another war. She says, the Civil War. He just looks at her. And he's like, what did you say? And she says, North and South, Gettysburg, Abraham Lincoln, you're a time traveler. And he's like, holy crap. And I felt like that was weird. He should know all about them if he was with that group. That's why it kind of jolts you, is what I mean. Like, because they did that, now we are waiting for that to be explained. And it's not explained, and now he's dead. So it's not going to be explained. So that was weird for me. And then Jamie goes, and you see Jamie moving the boat. It was very weird because it was stuck in there while she's having this conversation. And then we just go back to the conversation. And I don't know what that was, why we even had to cut to Jamie with the boat, except, he looked hot. That was when we got that hot picture of him. Other than that, we didn't really need to see it. Like, it was weird. But anyway, she said, I came in 1945, 1968. Again, he didn't volunteer any information. He didn't say, oh, I came from 1980. Are you related to Brianna McKenzie? He could have said something even there, but he didn't. And she's giving him all her information. And he's not hardly saying anything. And he says, you must understand what I'm trying to do. Racism, segregations, the reverberation of slavery, it could all go away if I'm successful. And Claire says, how are you going to do that? And he says, well, if the British win and the American slaves will go free and the Civil War won't happen. And she's just looking at him like, been there, done that, bought a t-shirt, dude. It ain't going to work. Save yourself the aggravation. It ain't going to work. Claire tells him you can't win. the war, it's already been lost. So they get into all of this, and she starts really trying to tell him, Alamance, I've tried to stop a few things. And also, she's very close, like they're very in each other's space in this at one point in this. And it almost felt like too much in your personal space. I didn't like it. I felt like she was in danger for some reason in that point. He yells at her that she stopped trying, she's given up. You've probably ruined lives, you've killed people. And she said, yeah, but I've also saved people. She says, I am supposed to be here. I am meant to be here. This is my time, which was the voiceover from the trailer. We got a couple beats of things we hear in the trailer in this episode, too. He asked her, why would they have this power if it's not meant to make the world a better place? And he said, oh, let me try to do what I'm trying to do. Maybe that's why I'm here. Maybe I am meant to come here and change things. You let me try, you got to try. And she says, give me your word, you won't harm anyone again, and I'll let you go try. That felt so not Claire. He says he won't, and she cuts him loose. I mean, he could have just grabbed her for all the hell she knew, you know? He could have used her to threaten them. That was stupid, in my opinion. That was stupid. I said, I think this was just to connect with her VO and to allow John to kill Richardson honorably. However, it felt a bit contrived. First, for Claire to recite all she knows and all she's learned over all this time, it felt very like the ending. I'm creating this end feel for the whole series by saying all this. And so she was lucky, I think, that John was there to kill him. And she watches him on the ground, and you just see she's very like, she says, you get a voiceover. I think you get a voiceover in that moment. And she says something like, as I watched his blood flow out and his life fade, my final little whatever of hope faded with it, or something like that. Hope that I could change my beloved's future, or something like that. So you really saw like the connection with the opening VO. So I get that that was why the VO was there, but it did feel like we didn't get enough transition from the previous scene to know anything. I didn't like the way that was handled. And so when John bursts in, he shoots, and you see John looking badass as hell, shoots him, and says, that was for William. And if I had two more, I would be shooting him for myself and for my brother. Okay, so I have a few dynamites, and there's one here. Somebody said, did not love Claire's interaction with Richardson. What the hell? It's like the old Claire who used to drive us up the wall. Now, I love Lord John not letting Jamie get off the hook, and Jamie's reaction. The challenge by Lord John was perfect and perfectly met. The scene as Jamie and Claire were riding away broke me. So Diana said, I did write a conversation between Claire and Richardson. Somebody thought they had a better idea. She said, this happens all the time, by the way. I've never had a script filmed exactly as I wrote it. She said, and probably neither has any other screenwriter. There's a ton of fiddling that happens ongoingly all the time. So she says, like, it's never exactly what the writer writes, you know, but she says she wrote a scene very different, apparently, than what ended up on the screen. So a lot of that felt a little like you were reciting a thing of your history, and it didn't feel like a genuine in the moment conversation. You know what I mean? Maybe that was because some of it wasn't her. It didn't feel organic in the moment. Like this is what these two people would actually talk. Okay. I said the next stream of scenes is pure Gabaldonian perfection. They come in, and John thanks her for saving his life and reputation. And Jamie says, smiles, and he says, puts his hat down. He looks at Claire like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be this magnanimous person now. And he looks all proud of himself. and he's like, it was so, this was like my favorite thing. And he said, because of our history, I wasn't going to let you die at the hands of that scoundrel, you know. He smiles at Claire, and he puts his hat down. And he said, I have decided to forgive you for what happened. We need never speak of it. Like, you see Claire goes like this. And she leans back against the wall and puts her head down like, he's really just such a stu-nod. He had this look on her face. And as she folds her arms like this, right away she could see she's annoyed. And she was just great. She was great in that scene. Very, like, not saying much over on the side, but she was giving away so much with her acting and her facial expressions and her body language. It was really great. And Jamie's all like kind of proud. It was so great. He was so naive and clueless and how everybody's feeling about this. It was so Diana. It was so Diana, this scene. So Claire's sitting there and she's thinking, like, he's walking himself into a wall. And John was perfect too. John's like, "What did you just say? You forgive me?" And Jamie's like, "Oh, like, yes, I." You know? Like, aren't you thrilled? And Claire is giving him this look like, dude, what are you doing? I mean, it did kind of feel like a great callback to the fight that they had in, what was it, Ep 3 or something, where she was just like, when he threw it up in her face again, and she's like, I thought we were through all that. And she had that same, like, exasperated wife look on her face. And John was just shocked. John yells at him, "You forgive me?" He says, "Well, I thank you for your help today. I do not forgive you." And he says, "For your treatment of me for the past 2 years." And then he storms off. And Jamie just looks confused. And he looks at Claire. And she's just like, as she says, "Pride goeth before the fall." And he said, "Didn't quote the Bible at me, Claire." that was all. That was all so perfectly said. And she goes, "Tell me then that you don't love that man, and I'll never say his name again." And he just looks at her. "Damn it, woman." It was so great. And then he walks into the room, and it was like great because it was like hardly a fight, but so much body language and facial expression was exchanged in that moment. It was great. They really just matured in this role. And walks into the room. John's drinking, and he says, Fraser's is very stubborn. And he said, "My grandfather never said an apology in his life." John goes, "The one that was beheaded at Tower Hill?" I love that he threw that right back. He knew exactly his whole line and everything, and Jamie just looked at him. He said, "Maybe he should have tried to be a little more conciliatory." And Jamie says, "Well, when you lay with Claire," he says, it felt like a betrayal of our friendship." And he said, "When you said you were both fucking me, you were reaching for me. And it felt like a betrayal of our friendship." And and John just like looks at him. And you almost feel in that moment he was really like kind of understanding that it wasn't just that he had sex with Claire. Like that was the thing that's bothering him, that he said it like that. And so I like that kind of he starts to feel that out and say they were both in grief. And I said that trying to explain something that was hard to explain. He says, "But I didn't do anything I did to hurt you, Jamie." He said, "I did what I did out of grief." He says, "But you nearly beat me to death intentionally for it." He said, "And you probably would have if those people hadn't come in." And he says, "If you cannot forget," and I loved, he was so good in this scene. He said, "If you can't forgive me after everything I have done for this friendship," he says, "then we don't have a friendship at all." And it was just really powerful. Like, got so funny and went then to something so intense and serious and like this. And you could see it's hitting Jamie, and he almost had a little bit of tears in his eye. And he said, "Truly, John, I owe you so much. You have sacrificed so much for me, and I could never repay it. When you and William embraced, I could see the love there." And he says, "I've done a lot. I've sacrificed a lot in my life." He says, "But raising William was not one of them." He said, "It was a gift, and I thank you for that gift." And it was really beautiful. And the thing is, I kept seeing little nods all through this episode to John's history. And so I just do really feel like they're setting up his series. A lot of things that you're seeing in these episodes. It just feels like there's these allusions to his past. That was another one. Jamie says, "I've wronged you, John, and I am sorry. My pride kept me from seeing things clearly." He's like, "You made William the man that he is. You deserve better than that." And so he's like, "What can I do?" And it was such a great scene between the two of them. And he rolls up his sleeves. John starts rolling up his sleeves. He says, "Well," he says, "my honor has been impugned," or whatever he says. He says, "And it needs to be restored. You owe me that." Jeannie goes like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're going to beat me then?" Because he sees him like, and he looks at him and he says, "Well," he says, "you basically beat the crap out of me, meaning in chess the last time." He says, "So I wanted my chance to get back." He says, "Shall we?" And he points to to the chessboard, and it was really great because it made me understand in the opening credits when you see the different things that they allude to that we've seen before. They were all things that was going to be very important in this season. When you go through, you know how a lot of the scenes were things from previous season that they wove in. You could see like there's a direct connection to a scene in this season for all of those things. So we saw the Hellwater setup of the chessboard and then moving the chessboard, and we knew that that was from Hellwater. So now you're seeing that ends up being like a resolution point for Jamie and John. So I thought that was really well done as well. Then we get to see with Claire and William them talking, I know, and he like talks about how he's never going to get used to hearing my two fathers. I really don't even really know how to act in this, how to be. And she says, "Well, Brianna had two fathers," and he says, she told me. And then she goes through all the litany of everybody that has two fathers. We're all in a situation where we had two fathers raised by a village, whatever. And she talks about her father. Her real father was Henry. We get the Henry mention in there. And when I was 5 was the last time I saw him. I was raised by my Uncle Lamb, who was like a father. And I thought that was a nice little nod into whatever we're going to see in this next season. So I thought that was good. And he says, "I kind of feel like loving them both. I feel like being close to one's betraying the other one type of thing." And you saw Bree went through the same thing. I saw people complaining, like, "William, let it go. My God, how you gonna?" But the thing is, Bree had to kind of go, like, I almost feel like she said the same thing to Jamie when she was out. She's like, I almost feel like I'm being disloyal to him for being here, and then he tries to make her understand, like, I appreciate everything your father did for you, I don't hold that against you. You should love your father. And he raised you and he whatever he said. So you kind of see the same kind of thing between Jamie and Bree back when she was still adjusting to it all that you're seeing here between Claire and William. Claire trying to adjust him to the idea that loving them both is not betraying one over the other one. So I thought that was a good parallel too. Some people didn't like it, but I thought that was okay. I said they just both love you. They want what's best for you. So this like gives a little icing on the resolution thing for William, and I thought that was good. And it's after that, I guess that conversation got his like head straight a little bit more. And now he's going to be having the Amaranthus conversation. Here's what Diana said about the whole take a village thing. She says, ditto on the it takes a village blather. That's not mine, by the way. Someone else put in the original it takes a village line, and which I've always found the most pompous, condescending line. And I took it out when I saw it in the script. She says the script goes through multiple iterations, and normally they don't let me make major changes in a later iteration. But sometimes I win a small point. And in this case, they ended up keeping the two fathers blather, but they backed off a little and didn't use the full original line of the it takes a village line. They just put like a little piece of it basically. So it was a negotiated compromise thing. So there was a lot changed in that scene. And then we get to William and Amaranthus. Amaranthus tells William that she was happy to meet his father, Jamie, and she says, "You've clearly forgiven them both." She asks if he can forgive her. And William says, "I understand why you did it." Never says he forgives her. He just said, "I understand why you did it." He said, "A few months ago, I saw it as black and white, but now I see shades of gray." And he says, and I almost feel like maybe like William is somehow in a spinoff because you almost feel like they're really developing him a lot. He says that there's no future for them. And she starts with, "You must love me. You tried to protect me, and I know it. And that you must really love me." Like, no, bitch. He said no. Walk off. This was like, whatever. "Don't you love me?" He goes, "You wouldn't want me to lie to you, would you?" I was like, yes. Kick her to the curb. Kick her to the curb. And so he takes her hand, wishes her well, and he walks away. I loved it. I was just praying he wouldn't turn back around and get weak, but he didn't. And that's when I started to worry. Okay, she said nothing from the book is in here. I hope that doesn't mean that she's not gonna do that with him kicking her to the curb in the book. I really don't want him together with her. So hopefully that will be the case. But she has said other things that make me think that she's not going to do something positive with him. She's like, Amaranthus may be playing a deeper game than what you see. She has said things like that, that she's up to more. There, she has a more nefarious situation going on than what we even have seen yet, book or show. So I kind of feel like the vibes that she's giving off, she's not going to be a positive character. So I'm just really hoping that that ends up being the case. I know some people ship them, but I don't. Let me take a quick look at the board. I know this is running long. I'm sorry. This is why I have to be organized a little because otherwise I just ramble. They keep him alive in case of an Outlander movie. Jamie was not, I don't believe Jamie's dying. I think if they did that, people would lose their freaking minds. After the Fergus thing, I think Fergus was the unexpected death. You know what I mean? That makes sense because really, when the show is any, everybody can't always survive. If you never have somebody actually die in a situation that you like, that gives like more authenticity to things. But because they did that, that kind of makes me feel like nobody we really love is going to die in the finale because I don't think they do it with two characters we love like that. I think they just would do the one, then other people die that we don't like anyway. Like whoever Percy and Richardson and stuff. But I don't think they're going to take two main characters and kill them in the final season. I think they would know that that would cause a riot in the fan base. So I don't think that Jamie's going to die. That's my call on that. Marcelline was young, but the actress was of age. Oh yeah, I'm not talking about in the show, Natalia. I'm not saying that we're going to see Fanny and William in the show. I'm saying in the book because I think we're going to advance more time. We're going to get past the revolution in the book. We get Yorktown. We get more time that goes by. So I'm saying in the future, and like before the book ends, maybe if the book ends in 10 years or 15 years or whatever, 1800 or something, or they're old people. Like I think in the course of that, we're going to see a connection with Fanny and William. I'm hoping for that, but not now. Not like 12-year-old, 13-year-old Fanny in the show. I'm not saying that. I hope I made that clear. What could Fanny possibly do with her time travel gene? Travel back and rescue Jane? No, because it would, unless it was before her time, she can't go to her own time. So she couldn't go to the time when all that happens to her. You know what I done? This is another thing that bothers me about this. Back last season in the finale, when Master Raymond comes to Claire and says to Claire, I come to ask for your forgiveness, with his little cryptic Master Yoda crap. And she says, for what? And he says, you will know, or whatever he says. At that time, Jane was still in prison and not dead yet when he visited her. If he knew all about all this, why the hell couldn't he go and help rescue her or get her out or whatever? If he's around and he's to see her in her sleep and talk to her and tell her whatever, why couldn't he at that point get Jane free? You know what I mean? If he's around then. So that's another thing that bothers me about that. We see them leaving and we have the rain scene. It was perfect. Lord John and William watch them leave. He turns back to look at William. And really, it's also nice. I think Jamie wanted to do this and wanted to have the repair with John and wanted to look back at William and do all these things because he thinks he's dying at Kings Mountain. And I think in his mind, he wants resolution to conflicts he had, including John, including William. This is the last time William sees him. He wants him to have that memory that he looked back and like wanted to keep me in his mind. John will have been this situation between them, hard feelings resolved. He will have said his apologies. I think in his mind, that's what he's trying to do, resolve anything that's out there. And then we see when they get home the bit with Bray, which what a great scene that was too. It was a beautiful scene. Bray was given birth to little Davy, their grandparents again. They made it back in time for the birth. I didn't mind not seeing him born. Some people complained about that, but like, how many times are we going to see a baby born? You know what I mean? I think the most important thing about Davy is that he can't time travel. We don't need to see him born. It was just another birth. I don't even think we saw him born really in the book. There wasn't a birth scene in the book. It was just that Davy was born, such and such, like it was said, but we didn't really go through a scene of the birth. You know what I mean? So I didn't mind if they didn't do it in the show. I mean, to me, that would have been a waste of time. I would have said, If they had, I would have said they should have taken that time and done something else, given us something else. We don't need to see another baby born. And I like that he gives the full name, so we know that William is part of his name was named after her brother, which I liked. I mean, we that's in the book too, but I liked it, in the show. And she sees, that something's bothering him, and he feels like now this is another thing he has to resolve. He needs to talk to his daughter and let her know, like, I could be leaving, and like have truth between them about this. And so he tells her, in your father's book, he mentions me in King's Mountain. And she just looks at me, she can tell, like, it's not good. And she's like, you're not going to pay back. I want to just say that Sophie Skelton, okay, I really thought she was such a crap actress in the beginning of when she was first on. I said I really thought she was not a talented actress. But she has grown so much from the time that she was cast to now. Like last season and this season, she has really blossomed, I think. She has really honed her acting skills and her talking and her accent with it, and just everything has become really honed with Sophie. Like she was so great in that scene with Marsley when they were crying on the floor. In this scene she was just like so devastated and like, well, don't go. He's like, I have to go. She's like, no, you don't. Maybe Daddy put that in the book so he could warn you so you wouldn't go. She says no, and he's explaining, I need to fight in this victory that I'm meant to be at. It's going to make it, he says, it's going to be an important step. It's a big movement for the Southern campaign of the war. And he says, I'm meant to be there. And if I don't go, what about if something changes? I need to go. And he says, I need to do it for you, for the family, for our property here is all under threat if I don't go. She's like, you don't understand. I just got you back. I just got you in my life. I lost all those years growing up, not having you in my life. And you could see her saying all this to him. It's really moving him. It was such a beautiful scene between them. Like, really, we don't get enough of scenes between Jamie and Bree and Jamie and Roger. Like, we haven't gotten a lot of those scenes. And so it's so treasured to have a scene like that. I just thought it was beautiful. I was kind of teary in that scene as well. And then we get the Percy thing. Another great scene. Enters Percy's office, puts his pistol on the desk. He's looking all fine in uniform. And he said, you betrayed me. He says, I'm back. Richardson is dead. And he's thinking, oh, great. Like, we're all good now, like Percy. Percy says he's sorry. And he pulls out a letter that says, you're going to sign this. And he puts the gun on the table, and it's very much evoking that scene from Brotherhood in the Blade when Hal sends him in to put the pistol on the table for him to commit suicide. And so, he says, you have to sign this way I can prevent any future problems. And he says, what about if I don't? He says, well, it's either going to be your blood on the paper or your signature. And it was very like hardcore Lord John not taking no bullshit, mode. Another great side of him. And he says, I can't take a chance that there's other copies. And he says, but either way, you need to pay for your treachery. And so he says, well, what's going to happen? He says, you'll probably be in prison for the rest of your life. And Percy signs the thing crying. Percy's in tears. And John takes the gun, and leaves. But before he leaves, Percy says, will you ever forgive me, John? And John says nothing. Oh, I forgot the scene too of him saying he loved him. The other scene in the thing. Oh, well. Anyway, that was great too. When he said he's sorry. That whole, like, John was so good. John was so good in all those scenes. As he walks out, he hears the gunshot and then a thump. And he puts on his hat. Has that serious look and leaves. Remember last week I was wondering about that scene? I said, how is it that he gets rescued and he's all scruffy and we're done with John? We never saw that scene of him walking out of the solicitor's office and putting his hat on. Like, is that not really in here? That was from that scene. So we got that piece done. And then we come back to the writing scene when he comes in the office. And she's like, I'm looking for some piece, and he jumps on the bed. What you writing? It was just so powerful, though. It was such a moving, and I did think it was from Diana. I didn't realize it was from the show. You'll even hear me in the thing go, I see what you did there, Diana. I see what you did. That was a cool little, you know, throw in there to bring you back full circle, but it wasn't her, obviously, clearly. But she doesn't mind it. She, like, apparently, I didn't write that, but there's a reason for it in the next episode. And it just reminds you. It was such a great thing for the viewer too, to just be reminded of that very, very beginning. The very first words that you heard watching the show was like that music and this and the vista and the voiceover. People disappear all the time, and it was just like this great as we get toward the end of the penultimate episode, we get called back to the very beginning thing we heard in the very first episode. So I thought that was great. And so, he's like, it's a great start, beautiful. And I loved hearing Jamie read it. Jamie reading the prologue. It was so great. Just beautiful. So here's what Diana said. Somebody said, please tell me that all of this entire years that this has just been her recounting her life in the book. Diana said, no, that particular bit was added by Stars people. You'll see why in the next episode. Somebody else says, I have questions about the scene you wrote with Claire and Jamie sitting in the bed. And she said, that is one of the scenes that I did not write. So she didn't write any of that scene, but it really did feel authentic to her. So I liked it. I liked that scene. And as they're talking about the beginning, they hear Fraser and hear the men coming up as we approach like the end, and so that was all just great. And as I said, I think that it might be the last line will tie in with her finishing the book and saying, and the world was all around us, new with possibilities, and like the end of the war is here. Our family is all here. I'm hoping that Morsley goes back, but I'm losing hope in that. And so then we get, Fraser, he comes outside, great little cliffhanger. He comes up, says, it's time, you promised. And Claire says, Cleveland's words echoed like a death knell on the ridge. The battle I had so dreaded now cast its shadow before us, and though I had conquered time myself, I stood powerless as it marched my beloved towards a fate I could not change. So that again ties in with the conversation that we heard in the very beginning voiceover, not the very beginning, but the part with Claire when they were riding, when we come off the credits. And then the conversation with Richardson, and then the third beat of it here at the end when she talks about I couldn't stop it, So I like that, I could see the thought of how the structure of it was, you know what I mean? So that was very good. Another Diana D little quick thing. Somebody said, are we going to have it by the end of this show? Claire find out that her parents were time travelers. Diana said, not happening. And then someone else says, I bet Claire is the one to plant the flowers, the forget-me-nots. Diana says, no. So like little tidbits that we got as well. So we know it's not Claire. She's kind of ruled out Claire. So that was interesting to find out. Another Diana D, she said about the finale. She said, I'm a little nervous about the final episode. Since Matt wrote it, I hope it doesn't mean that the faith live nonsense gets dragged to the end. And Diana said, no, I co-wrote the last scene with Matt. Unless they messed with it after the last time I saw it, there's nothing whatsoever about faith, etc. in it. She said, I did write 809, but they did also mess with it afterwards, inserting a very sappy line by Claire, for instance, and removing what I thought was a very moving exchange between Jamie and John, but them's the breaks. So that was where she said what I said earlier. So she thinks that a whole thing with Claire was very sappy, and she had another bit in there between Jamie and John that wasn't included. I don't know what that was, though. Oh, the future. I'm not sure if we'll see Morsley. I really hope we would, but I don't know. I feel like that's one thing that's going to bother me if we don't get some resolution with that. We know the territory, like I said, doesn't go to France, so that's not a thing, Here's some questions I want you guys to answer. Do you think we'll have more cameos of any other characters in this final episode? You think we'll see other characters that from the past somehow? I think that when Jamie is in his death thing, where he is dying and she's laying on him and he's going through all these things, I think we'll get like a montage of like his life flashing before his eyes and seeing like the different moments with, we'll see those people like that. But I'm talking about an actual person that comes back to play and be involved in a scene of some sort, whether it's a ghost, it's like fresh material is what I mean, like new material that we get, not just a flashback of previous scenes. You know what I mean? Do you think we'll get any new material with a remembered new scene that we hadn't seen, but he's remembering, or so they have to bring the actor back to do it, or what? So, all right. So now let me check the board real quick, and then we're gonna go. I'm so much longer than I wanted to be. I'm sorry. I'm so frazzled right now. I'm sorry. This show has been a mess. I'm just like my brain is in 4 different directions, plus 3 shows this week. So it's a little much. I'm doing the best that I can juggling. And then I'll start getting all our promo stuff up for the new week for the final episode. One to go. I can't believe it, you guys, though, honestly. I can't believe after next week we don't have another new show of Outlander, Now it's just going to be like a constant jonesing for the 10th book. Like that's the new thing we have to look forward to, unless we get the Lord John series. But I'm almost afraid. Like I kind of, I don't know. Do you guys think we'll see Fanny planting the flowers? I saw that was a popular thought out there. All right, let me lean back, and look at this. My back is hurting. Let me look at the board real quick and see if there's anything here that I can answer. Patty said, could it be a trade-off that the show people and stars cut several episodes short in order to give extra time to the last episode? But why do they need to do that? Like, if you have an episode and it goes 53 minutes, you're not going to start a new thing until an hour goes by anyway. So give us, maybe do a 1 or 2 less commercials and give us the time in the show. I mean, it's not like you'd have to block out extra time because you're just usually filling that hour in with advertisements and stuff, promotion. So I was thinking when Jamie dies, leaves his body, goes to Inverness, sees Claire in the window, and that's when he goes back to himself with the help of Claire's blue light and lives again. Dies, does not leave her, I think she meant to say, or something to that effect. No, I think that is good, although a lot of people don't think we'll see the ghost thing resolved in the show. I think it should be put in the show, even if we know it's not the way that Diana's doing it. We look at it like an alternate ending thing. I think it would be good in the show with all the dynamic that they've done with Frank to then see them pass each other. It kind of is like a looping about to that first episode, and now knowing like Frank felt his presence or saw him, and now is writing this ending. Also, I think we're going to see something concrete to show how Frank comes to the conclusion that he died. Is that I think we're going to see where like somebody goes and sees that he's dead and that Claire just won't leave him. Like sees that he's not moving, he looks like he's dead. And Claire's laying on him crying, and they are all like, come on, Mother Claire, come on, whoever, whoever's talking to her, come on, Claire, like Roger tried to talk to her, or Auntie Claire with Ian or whatever, and she's just like, no, no, and like holding on to him. I think then somebody that's collecting the information about the dead is going to come by and mark it. We're going to see them like mark it casualties and put his name in, and we'll see that that's on the list, and that was probably how Frank saw it. Do you know what I mean? I think they're going to do something to explain that why it was in documents that he found that made him write this, because he probably wrote it knowing maybe it's not true, maybe it was wrongly placed. So if there was a chance to escape it, let him know. So I think that might happen where somebody reports it because they saw it when they went by and reports it as a casualty for the battle. And that's how it's on a list. So you guys let me know what you think of that. I think they'll show it though, because they've made this whole book thing such a prominent thing that they're going to have to show, well, why is it in the book? You've been telling us this whole time, you can't change history. You can't change history. And it's stressing that now in this episode. So how do you change history? Like if that's what Frank thought. So I think they're going to want to show it, how Frank would have had that information in the first place. Nicole says, was there a scene where John sees the lighthouse from the boathouse Yes, yes, because you saw when he was looking out the wall, from the wall, you saw the light going, hitting him, and then going around, go light to dark, like flashing. And so you saw that, like, kind of reflected on his face to realize he was looking across the water and could see the lighthouse through the crack. You know what I mean, in the wall. So that was what I thought too. I wonder if the lighthouse is real. Would love to visit when in Scotland next time. I don't know. Do you think it was real or do you think it was CGI? It looked really too perfect almost to be real. Pirate Jamie is damn fine. I know. Don't tell me it doesn't look like an oil painting. That was such a good job from Diana, though. Such a snarky comment. It was a betrayal, in my opinion. Grief, please. Priscilla's not happy about that. You know what, Priscilla, you're be glad that you weren't with me when we did this book, because I was saying like I love that this stroke was done, and everybody thinks I'm crazy. Well, some people also like it in the group. A lot of people that like they hate the whole Geneva thing. They hate anything other than Jamie Claire. Don't like that, but I thought it was good. But Diana went through a lot of shit from people. It was the most back and forth Diana had about anything that she did in the book. It was they call it the big event for a reason because the fans went nuts about it. So happy to see John call out Jamie for his anger and violence. Someone needed to do it. I know his whole attitude was like, "Well, I know how much John loves me. He's just probably desperate for me to say I forgive him." And I really was proud of John standing up and going, no, don't do me any friggin' favors there, Mister Big Scott boy. Hey, Veronica, how was work? What's the point of Claire's blue light if Jamie doesn't survive? Oh, Jamie's going to survive. I have no doubt. Natalia says they said it would be a satisfactory ending, so I don't think Claire or Jamie die. That would not be a satisfactory ending. No, it would not. That whole story has so many holes to even question anything. Which story were you talking about, Veronica? Sophie is wonderful now. I'm way back on the. Richard looks so beautiful and handsome holding that baby. Oh yes, oh yes, the little baby was cute, and I just did love it. But I do want to. I hope we get the idea that he can travel. They haven't really nurtured much with Mandy the way like she has that power. Like we haven't seen a lot of scenes except the whole thing in the beginning with Mrs. Cunningham, but we haven't seen much with her. So I'm not sure if they're going to bring that out or how they're going to do it. Dana says, I still can't believe we never got a scene with Roger or Bree talking to Jamie about meeting Brian. There's a lot that I feel like that about. That's one big one. Okay, does anybody think we'll see Jenny come back? That's one of the people I was thinking about. Jenny come back at the end, and she's with them. I hope I would love that. Okay, Natalia says that in the beginning she was struck that the actress that plays Lizzie is better than Sophie, and she also felt that the tension between her and Richard was initially like it lacked uh, whatever because she thought that Richard was so much more talented than Sophie, but she doesn't think that anymore. I know, like I've really seen her really hone her craft. I don't know if it's because she's been around Katrina talking to her, giving her ideas and helping her, because they all say that Katrina's very helps them learn little bits and pieces of craft that maybe they need to sharpen. So I can see that they're very close. I love that scene. Oh, glad she didn't poo poo it. Which scene? The scene on the bed with the thing? Yeah, I think she wasn't upset about it because she knew what they were going to do. It was an idea they had probably after she wrote the script, so they added it in. Or else she would have wrote that because they would have had it as a beat. I think it was developed after the script was written, but they talked to her about it. Like everything that they changed and did, they talked to her about it because David said as they were talking about everything happening with the Jamie John resolution scene, they were making like changes to put the weight more equal. Brought Diana was in on all those conversations, so I think when they add a major thing or change a major thing, they do talk to her, and she must have understood what they were doing because she was like, "You'll understand it more in the last episode." Jamie complimenting his wife on her great writing. Yes. Okay, so Martina said that she was hooked from the people disappear all the time in the first episode, and she said she watched the show first and the books after season 1. See, that's what I mean. A lot of people were drawn to this series from the show. So people that are all like negative on the show and acting like, like Diana benefited a lot from having the show as well. The reason that her books are so, I think she was like at 10 million copies, and now she's like 35 million copies or something. Like it's been almost quadrupled, her exposure and her buying of like of her books and stuff. Or even higher than that, actually. I think she is. Okay, who planted the flowers? What do you guys think? I mean, they're gonna have to do it. They're gonna have to not do it because it's a big point that they made them make it in the first episode. They actually hadn't put the flowers there. They had a different way that they connected, and she made them add it because she said it's important for the story for the end. So that needs to be there. So there is something to it. And I don't know if they end up doing what she said about it, but they do something, I'm sure. Definitely montage in the last episode. Yeah, I think that whole dying scene is going to be shot very cool, almost like they're in another place. I can picture them doing it like they're both in this dreamscape together, and she's trying to guide him, like her connection to him is like tightened in his subconscious, and she's like trying to pull him, get him going, and he's trying to look out to what everything that's happening, and I think he starts to see like scenes of his past flashing before his eyes, like you do, they say, when you die. Your life flashes before your eyes, and I think in that moment we're going to get a lot of montage. We still have to get the 7-page conversation. You know what I think is part of that 7-page conversation is, in the trailer when you hear her say, I'm happy with everything that's ever happened. Are you happy with everything that's happened in our lives? Would you want to do anything again or something like that? I think that must be part of that conversation. Vicky says, I would like the ending to be a wedding. I do think Marsley will show up with the kids, and Fanny will be the one to plant the flowers at Craig Nadoon. Maybe she's also the woman speaking to Claire at Culloden Fraser's grave. Oh, wow. She didn't look like that lady, though. Like the newspaper obituary. Yes, Vicky says, in the wording in Frank's book, it says he has fallen instead of dead. But Jamie could be shot, falls, and not die. Yeah, but fallen usually means dead among the fallen. But it is interesting they chose that word, but it does imply that the dead. That's how they would say it, the fallen. But it is interesting they use that word, like not among the casualties or among the dead or whatever. But I do think like they intended in the books that he did die because he was on a list. He must have researched and found that had a list of the dead. Even though maybe at the end they know that he shouldn't be on that list, it was never corrected. And so maybe Frank even found further documentation that he does live, but that he must come close to being dead because in the papers, in the other research he found, he died. And so it conflicts with maybe later things he found, but he wanted to urge him that maybe there's something he was meant to say to help him. I do not think Jenny's coming back, Kim says. Martina says, poor Manny, she's not a very good actress. That's why they probably cut scenes with her. Veronica said, I think the American accent hindered Sophie's acting at first. Lillian says, the last scene with Jamie and Claire, that was my favorite. The one of them reading the book in the bed. Yeah, that was very good. Fanny plants the flowers. We can talk Outlander all day. Yeah. I think they should have switched out Jermaine. Jermaine's supposed to be older than Jemmy. And the kid playing Jemmy looks way older than Jermaine. So that was weird too. Lauren Lyle is in the cast credits for the finale on IMDb. Then again, so is the actress who plays Elspeth. Ah. Okay, you guys, I'm going to work on this piece for tomorrow. For you guys, if you're patrons, look for it. If you're not patrons, why are you not a patron? Join Patreon. Patreon.com/QueenBeesHive. All right. Much love. Look for Patreon posts next. I will edit this up after that. Okay? All right. Bye, everybody.